I just discovered that I have two bodies as soon as I was born, but their forms are different. The first body, although the original body, is just a weak baby, but he was born with a magical technique, with the ability to practice while sleeping. The other body is a dragon-shaped monster surrounded by evil energy. Extremely powerful, but invisible and untouchable. Even my baby body cannot see it. Just as I arrived in this place, I was a bit curious about what was going on. At that moment, some information suddenly appeared in my consciousness: cultivation level, mortal body, innate talent, evil god incarnation, luck, and 1000. Seeing this, I was somewhat surprised to find out that my monstrous body was actually an evil god incarnation. However, because it was invisible and untouchable, it currently did not possess any attacking capabilities. But as long as I consumed 300 units of luck, I could make the evil god incarnation appear briefly. The only known way to obtain this luck was to automatically increase it by 1 point each day. Returning to my thoughts, I observed the situation around me. The woman holding me in front of me should be my mother in this life. Beside my mother stood an innocent and lovely maid, curiously sizing me up. At the door of the room stood an old woman, whispering something to my mother. She seemed to be a midwife. Soon, the old woman left the room and appeared in the view of my evil god incarnation. At that moment, I confirmed the location of the evil god incarnation, which was above the courtyard outside the house. With a thought, the massive head of the evil god incarnation penetrated into the room, seeing my infant self and the scene with my mother. However, as an infant, I could not see it. Indeed, it was invisible and untouchable. At that moment, my beautiful mother seemed to sense something and looked towards the direction of the evil god incarnation. I couldn't help but be amazed at how sharp my mother's intuition was. Before I could think further, I felt drowsy and fell asleep. Unexpectedly, the evil god incarnation was unaffected and could move freely. It was a strange feeling, as if I were in a half-dreaming, half-awake sleepwalking state. Then, I began to control the evil god incarnation and explore this new world. I first observed this new home and found that in this not-so-small quadrangle courtyard, there are currently only 4 people including myself, my mother, a maid, and a woman who seems to be in charge of household chores. Could it be that they are all out? I was a bit puzzled. I had just been born, yet my father was not around? And why are there only 3 people living in such a large courtyard? Not even a male servant? Although I was puzzled, I couldn't find an answer for the time being, so I let the evil god incarnate walk to the streets of the town. After wandering around for a while, I found that this small town has a radius of about 7 or 8 miles. I couldn't understand the language of this place at all, and it seemed that the evil god's avatar could only move within a radius of about 10 miles from the baby. Beyond that, it would lose control. In order to adapt to this world as quickly as possible, I let the evil god's avatar go into the town all night to communicate with people and learn the language here. Soon, a night passed, and the baby's original body woke up, feeling hungry in my stomach, making me cry subconsciously. My mother heard the noise and quickly came to my side to comfort me and feed me. After I was full, my mother handed me over to the maid. She smiled happily, played with me affectionately for a while, and then carried me out of the house to get some fresh air. Another day passed quickly, and there were still no other men in the courtyard, which made me quite suspicious. Gradually, after a few more days, cultivation, mortal body, innate talent, demon god incarnation, luck, 1005. During these days, I also gained some basic understanding of the language of this world and confirmed that there were indeed no men in this household. I also discovered that our family is very wealthy, but for some reason, the courtyard we live in is quite remote. In the blink of an eye, another month passed, and relying on the demon god's avatar to roam around, I have almost mastered the language and general situation of this place. I am in the territory of the Great Chu dynasty, in a small town called Chiang Town. Here, in addition to a large number of ordinary people, there are also some minority cultivators, among whom the Fire Spirit Taoist of the Fire Spirit Taoist Temple, the Town Ping Taoist of the Town Ping Taoist Temple, and the Floating Dust Taoist of the Floating Dust Taoist Temple are the most prominent. The Fire Spirit Taoist has the most profound cultivation, with unparalleled mastery of fire techniques. The Town Ping Taoist is extremely skilled in talisman techniques, while the Floating Dust Taoist is the town's master of divination, with a fortune-telling skill that is highly sought after. Apart from the various rumors in the town, my own growth in this month has been excellent. In terms of cultivation, it has been a year since I started. With talents, the incarnation of evil gods, and luck at 1045. With a year of cultivation, this already represents the strength of an average young person. As for why I cultivate so fast, it is of course due to the fact that I have a technique that allows me to cultivate independently. I can even walk on my own now, but in order to avoid trouble, I still dare not reveal it for the time being. Besides cultivation, What I need to do now is to completely master the words of this world. In the town of Qiyang, there are two places where I can learn to read: Qiyang Academy and Fuxing Book School. The Qiyang Academy belongs to the town's official institutions, with channels to enter the civil service to obtain merit. And in the future, if you want to obtain merit, you can only come here. Moreover, it is said that officials in Dichu are able to obtain cultivation resources from the imperial court, and can even obtain elixirs that directly enhance cultivation to break through bottlenecks. The Floating Life School, on the other hand, is a private school set up by a female teacher, where there are no channels for obtaining a meritocracy, and students are only given literacy and initiation, and then taught all kinds of survival skills according to their personal preferences, including zither, chess, calligraphy and painting, astronomy and geography, carpentry, farming, cooking, embroidery and other assorted ones. And the tuition fees charged by the floating school is also very odd. Voluntary payment of fees. Think here to learn how much it is worth to give how much. Can be money or goods. Even now there is no money and no goods also line. To be successful in their studies, and later feel that can make up and then come to make up on it. Properly a look at the conscience. It could be said that this mode of operation of the Floating Life Book School was absolutely abnormal, because under normal circumstances, it was simply impossible to operate. And although the female teacher herself only wore a simple robe, and not much makeup, but vaguely has a unique dusty temperament, Jiang Yun had good reason to suspect that this female teacher was a young lady from some family who was overly bored and purposely ran here to experience life. Of course, these things didn't have much to do with Jiang Yun. Anyway, with the evil god incarnation in place, he could now go back and forth between the Red Sun Academy and the Floating Life Book School for free. Wherever it teaches well, it's a good place to go. Ma'am, the slave girl feels that the little master is really so smart. When he is hungry, he will babble and wave his little hands, and when he wants to relieve himself, he will babble and stomp his little feet. This is only a month old. Other babies have to be at least a year old before they can barely express these needs. Why don't we bring the young master to the Taoist priest to have his fortune told? I'm sure it won't be any worse than that unicorn's. At this moment a silver bell-like voice rang in the ears of Jiang Yun's infant essence. Chapter 3, This maid will never stop killing me. When Jiang Yun heard this, he directly froze. This voice was none other than that of the only maid in the house, Chu Ling, whose was currently holding Jiang Yun and teasing him. The unicorn son that Chu Ling spoke of was the son of the town's fearless martial arts hall director, Ning Kuan, Ning Xiaoyu. It is said that this Ning Xiaoyu was born 10 days earlier than Jiang Yun, half a month ago to the floating dust Taoist priest there to calculate a fortune. Learned that its talent is extraordinary, with a fire soul talent. Will be in the age of 7 years old or so stepped into the realm of the martial arts master. Before the age of 20 years old to transcend the mortal world. It can be said that the future is unlimited. Now the Fire Spirit Taoist Temple's Fire Spirit Taoist Master has personally said that after Kirin Zi Ning Xiaoyu completes his initiation, he will formally accept him as his disciple and teach him advanced cultivation techniques. It is said that the people who want to worship the Fire Spirit Taoist Master, countless, but no one can tell the Fire Spirit Taoist Master to take the initiative to accept the disciple, let alone to teach the higher cultivation techniques as a temptation. At this time, Jiang Yun could not help but wow and cry. He did not want to go to that floating dust Taoist priest to calculate any fortune right now. After all, this Taoist priest had real skills and was not some kind of charlatan. What if this floating dust Taoist chief can calculate his evil god incarnation talent? This is not afraid of direct disaster, because he collected this month and some of the news is related to the evil gods and so on. It is said that now there are evil god congregation all over the Chu dynasty rebellion. The Chu emperor issued an imperial decree. Once found the evil god congregation, it is to be arrested and lynched to show the public. Although Jiang Yun wasn't sure if the evil god cult and his evil god incarnation would have any connection right now, no matter what, as long as it was discovered that he had such a talent, the Chu dynasty would definitely not call for a good end for him. After all, this was an ancient dynasty, and who would speak to you with so much benevolence and morality from those in power? Aya, what's wrong with the little ancestor? Is this anger? Is it to go out for a walk? Chu Ling hurriedly coaxed up Jiang Yun, who was waving his little hands around and stomping his little feet in protest. You nerd, what's wrong? Is it hunger? The beauty mother, on the other hand, gently and carefully received Jiang Yun. Seeing that Chu Ling's offer had been interrupted by him for the time being, Jiang Yun stopped making noise after 2 more wows. Giggle, how cute. The young master seems to be trying to express something very important, but the slave girl can't read it. Chu Ling laughed cheerfully. Jiang Yun sniffed and directly rolled his eyes. This little guy. At this point, Mother was also amused. Ma'am, look, is young master rolling his eyes? Is he already able to understand what we're saying? Why don't you ask the Taoist master floating dust to give it a try tomorrow? Give him a little more reward. and we should be able to ask him to tell the little young master's fortune that way. Chuling opened her mouth again in surprise. Jiang Yun's eyes instantly widened. This dead girl is really dying for me. And just as he was about to wow and protest again. No need. All I want now is for Yuner to be able to live a good life peacefully and happily in the future. That's enough. Just don't bother asking for those false names and whatnot. Only to see her mother smiling gently at Jiang Yun. Jiang Yun couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when he heard this. Shu Ling, however, sighed softly and vaguely lost some color. The beauty mother was also silent as she gently shook Jiang Yun. Jiang Yun naturally detected his mother's and Chu Ling's girl's misbehaving mood changes. This month, he hadn't seen his father here, nor had he seen anyone come to look for his mother. In this situation, he was basically certain that his mother was a widow. As for what secrets were behind this, he was too lazy to explore. After all, he wasn't really a newborn baby. Where was all the pretense? As long as his mother was having a good time and treating him well, that was enough. Several days passed. Jiang Yun borrowed the evil god incarnation to go back and forth between the Qiyang Academy and the floating lifebook school to learn literacy. But after some comparison, it was clear to him that the quality of the teaching of that not quite right-looking female teacher was clearly a great deal higher than that of the Qiyang Academy. One dean and 10 teachers of the Qiyang Academy could only teach the students 5 to 10 words a day in the initiation teaching, but the female teacher of the floating life school can profoundly teach the students more than 10 to 20 words in a day through the association of various images and interesting things. To be at such a level and yet run out on her own to open a private school was a waste. This also made Jiang Yun even more certain that this lady teacher was definitely not from an ordinary family. As for the woman ran out to open private school because of boredom, or there are other plans, he did not have to explore. Anyway, can make him literate can be. Now that Jiang Yun had a finished plan in his mind, he was going to study literacy from now on, mainly on the lady husbandman's side, and if there were no more initiation courses on this side, he would run off to the Qiyang Academy to have a look around. In this way, he should be able to complete his enlightenment very quickly, and then he could main study the Qiyang Academy's servant course. When he arrived at the age of formal enrollment, has already started I don't know how far, then perhaps directly in the Red Sun Academy in the sky. Stunning everyone, can be described as beautiful. By the way, when the time comes, he still has to send some thanks to the lady teacher, even though the other party won't know what's going on, but he always secretly learned to read and write from others. Gradually, it came to the 3rd month, training, 2nd year of mortal birth, talent, evil god incarnate, chance, luck, 1073, Jiang Yun's body had grown much stronger again, and at the 2nd year of mortal fetus cultivation, he already had the strength of an ordinary youth. In addition, he realized that he was now able to make some simple sounds, shouting ah, ya, ha, croak and the like were not a problem, but he didn't dare to show it now, because he was worried that this dead girl beside him wouldn't be able to resist secretly taking him to someone to have his fortune told. After all, the average baby didn't start being able to make these simple sounds until they were 7 or 8 months old, and this 3-month-old of his was really a bit of an exaggeration. During this period of time, he also discovered one more thing, that is, this girl Chuling seems to be no ordinary maid either, because his evil god incarnation once inadvertently saw Chuling encountering 3 thugs in an alleyway when she went out to buy more daily necessities, and the result was that the 3 thugs were beaten by Chuling in 3 or 2 times, and lay on the ground in a neat and tidy manner, humming and whining. In his estimation, this girl should have a cultivation of 6 years of mortal birth, which was the level of a practitioner. One must know that this girl can still look very young, to reach this level so young and yet still be a maid by her mother's side. Gradually, another 2 months passed. Training, 4 years of mortal birth, talent, evil god incarnate, chance, luck, 1112. Jiang Yun had already grown into a porous baby, and during this time, he had already learned more than 1,000 words. It was estimated that he would be able to completely complete enlightenment by the time he reached 1 year of age, and by this time, he finally couldn't help but start pretending to make some simple noises in order to prepare himself to learn to speak as early as possible in the future. Rarely he dragged to now to show. Chuling, this girl is also excited to hold him cheered a small half-day. Its red little face want to take him to fortune-telling mind is hidden cannot hide. Good thing. There is no mother's permission. It's not dare to trespass. Chapter 4, The Stupid Donkey. By the 6th month. Training, 5 years in a mortal womb. Talent, evil god incarnate, chance. Luck, 1178. Mother. Jiang Yun shouted with some awkwardness. He just wanted to pretend that he had learned to speak like this. And now this awkwardness and unnaturalness was considered appropriate. The mother who was holding Jiang Yun at this time froze, and then was all excited and surprised. Yuner, are you calling out to your mother? Call out again for my mother to hear. Yeah, the little ancestor can call out to his mother now. Shout again. Say it again. Chu Ling on the side was also instantly excited. Jiang Yun simply shut up and pretended not to understand anymore. Anyway, he had already shouted it out, so he could just slowly show more in the following days. Say it, little granddaddy. Say it again. Chu Ling, however, coaxed Jiang Yun one by one. Jiang Yun, on the other hand, just went yada 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 and played dumb. During this period of time, he had learned a lot more about the situation of his family. His mother had a pharmacy in the center of the town, and the business was not bad, because he had hired a shopkeeper to take care of it, so he only needed to go and check the situation occasionally. In addition, outside of the town, it seemed that his mother had some farmland that she had hired a farmer to take care of as well. All in all, his family was still quite rich, enough to feed and clothe him in the future anyway, and just cultivate in peace without having to worry about any work. 3 days later, Jiang Yun had already begun to call out to his mother normally and naturally, and at the moment, he was lying quietly on his bed, lending his evil god incarnation to literacy with the female teacher there at the book school. Little ancestor, look at this. A pleasant voice rang out, but Si Chu Ling suddenly took a piece of paper and placed it in front of Jiang Yun, only to see that on it was the word Chu Ling. Jiang Yun froze. What did this stupid girl want? Could it be that she knew he could already read? That couldn't be possible, could it? Little ancestor, slave girl is now here to teach you to read and write, haha. When you grow up, you'll be able to learn quickly and amaze everyone. Look, this one is called Chu, and this one is called Ling Chu Ling. Chu Ling taught in style. Jiang Yun was directly speechless. Was this girl crazy? He was still just a 6-month-old baby, and this was going to enlighten him. Although it was true that he could already recognize most of the common words now, this was not a normal situation. Moreover, this girl taught him his name as soon as he arrived. How heartless and crazy is this? Chu, spirit. Chu, spirit. The girl was still repeating the chant, as if she was trying to use this method to force Jiang Yun to memorize these 2 words. Jiang Yun was really speechless by the whole thing, so he opened his mouth and recited, stupid, donkey. Chu Ling was stunned, then surprised. Little ancestor learned it so quickly? Worthy of being our little ancestor. Jiang Yun was once again speechless. Did this girl not hear him talking about being a stupid ass? Humph. I heard that the unicorn child is only now able to wow croak, and is already rumored to be some kind of early wisdom. Prodigy. Bullish. That guy is still 10 days older than our little ancestor. Now that our little ancestor can read and write, he must be the prodigy of prodigies. At this moment, Chu Ling smugly muttered to himself. Jiang Yun couldn't help but be embarrassed. During this period of time, his evil god incarnation had also heard the town's residents discussing that Qilin Zi's prodigy deeds from time to time outside, and all of them had praised him for his intelligence. He also had to admit that people that was indeed a Qilin Zi. Anyway, he did not have the goodwill to compare with others. After all, he is not a pure baby, have lived a long time with the memory of reincarnation, and now there is an evil god incarnation of this heavenly ability in the body, which is still with others a real baby then. Do not mind shame? Little ancestor, read it again. Chu, spirit. The girl excitedly took the paper again for Jiang Yun to read. Stupid, donkey. Jiang Yun shouted again in a slightly vague manner. Right. Brilliant. Ha, not right, ah. Stupid, donkey? Young master, what you just recited was stupid donkey. The Chu Ling girl finally reacted. Stupid ass. Jiang Yun shouted again. Oops, it's a mistake. Young master, it's Chu Ling. Chu Ling, not a dumb ass. Stupid ass. Stupid ass. No, it's not. It's Chu Ling, not the stupid ass. Stupid ass. Chu Ling directly pulled her small face across. Ha ha. When Jiang Yun saw this, he couldn't help but just let out a cheerful baby laugh. Young master, you can't be doing this on purpose. Chu Ling couldn't help but puff out her little face, while there was also a somewhat incredulous look on her face. Obviously it was not quite believing that a baby that was only 6 months old would play tricks on people, and still play tricks on words. At this moment, Jiang Yun didn't have the time to pay attention. He just couldn't help but laugh happily one after another. Oops, how can this be? It's the little young master, you're still too young to pronounce it, right? That's it, right? Chu Ling couldn't help but agonize her little face. Subsequent days, Chu Ling girl is still attentive with Jiang Yun teach literacy, obviously also become more eager, but is no longer mentioned its own name. Jiang Yun is a ride without a ride to cope with this girl. He now also thought, well, in fact, this girl to make such outrageous things, but also may not be anachronistic, because this can let him in the future enlightenment to use as an excuse to pretend to learn fast. After all, playing a small ears and eyes to learn well. But, this maid next to his mother can actually read and write? This is what he did not expect. Can only say that his mother's origin is only really not simple. 7th month. Training, 6 years of mortal birth. Talent, evil god incarnate. Chance, luck, 1203. Jiang Yun already had the physical qualities of a practiced fighter nowadays, but it wasn't easy to say what level his little short-handed, short-legged baby body could perform at. It should be possible to knock out an ordinary adult with one punch, right? In addition, that unicorn child in the town would now cry out for his mother, and was again being talked about with envy and jealousy in the streets and alleys from time to time. Out of curiosity, Jiang Yun also had the evil god incarnate go over to take a look and found that it was indeed a very intelligent little baby. Young master, this is the peace talisman that the slave girl begged from the old Taoist in Jinping this day. You have to wear it well, it can keep you safe. At this moment, Chu Ling was holding a small piece of red triangular cloth ornament hanging onto Jiang Yun's neck, which apparently had a folded talisman sewn inside. Jiang Yun couldn't help but freeze. He had to say that this girl was really good to him. She actually got him a peace talisman drawn by old Taoist Jinping? He knew that the talisman drawn by Jinping Taoist himself would cost 10 taels of silver, or 10,000 yuan, and that he couldn't buy it just because he wanted to, if there is no relationship. Running to Jinping Taoist temple squatting for 3-5 months' time is normal. The biggest function of the peace talisman is, naturally, to keep people safe. It allows one to avoid all kinds of accidental risks, and also protects against the unsuspecting, and can repel various unfavorable factors such as demons and evil spirits. And these days, Jiang Yun had already learned through the evil god incarnation that not only were there ghosts roaming around in Red Sun Town, but there were also mountain spirits and ghosts in the deep mountains outside the town. The ghosts in the town are fine. Most of them are ordinary souls that do no harm, and generally do not take the initiative to harm people. On the contrary, some of the mountains in the head of the mountain spirit monster occasionally ran into the town to harm people. The town has a great ability to cultivators are not many. Naturally, it is not possible to watch over all the time to come, so the talisman has become the most ordinary people's best dependence. Especially when people go out of town and do business elsewhere or something like that. The risk of encountering robbers, mountain spirits and monsters will increase dramatically. At this time, if you can have a powerful peace talisman, you can largely save your life. He had also witnessed the effects of the talismans drawn by those talisman masters from the Jinping Taoist temple through the evil god incarnation. In the town, wherever there was a house with a house-suppressing talisman from the Jinping Taoist temple, the wandering souls on the streets would not dare to approach easily. However, some of the house-suppressing talismans that were not powerful enough could not be very effective when facing those mountain spirits and monsters. He was in a late night, saw a goblin to the town as a scourge. The family door beams affixed to the house charm directly burned themselves did not stop the goblin invasion. The result of the family's children were goblin dragged away by force. It was quite a big deal at the time, but the officials joined forces with several Taoist temples for a few days, but they couldn't recover the child. Jiang Yun had also thought about helping. After all, his evil god incarnation was capable of consuming 300 chi manifestations. The problem was that he wasn't sure what consequences would be brought about by allowing a terrifying existence like the evil god incarnation to appear in Red Sun Town at that moment. At that time, the high and mighty gathered to a door-to-door investigation of evil cultivators or something is not impossible. His body now has little ability to defend itself, and may even involve his mother and Chu Ling. In this situation, he naturally could not afford to gamble. Humph. This old Jinping Taoist is not very capable, but he is not small. However, in a small place like Qiyang Town, there are no major disasters or evils. This peace talisman, young master, you can also make do with the first. After all, in case the slave girl is not by your side for a while, you can also protect yourself against the young. At this moment, he only heard Chu Ling continue to mutter to herself, while at the same time giving the talisman to be hidden under Jiang Yun's clothes, and subsequently rearranging his clothes. Chapter 5, Night Attack by Mountain Goblins. Old Taoist Jinping's skills are not that great, but he is not small? When Jiang Yun heard what Chu Ling said, he couldn't help but freeze. Why was this girl's tone so big? Could it be that this girl was even more uncomplicated than he had expected? Young master, what's wrong? When Chu Ling saw Jiang Yun froze, she couldn't help but be a little puzzled. Sister. Jiang Yun, however, opened his mouth to call out and blinked. To be honest, this girl had treated him with sincerity and honesty, and was worthy of him calling out to her as a sister. Previously, teasing her about being a dumbass was just a joke. Sister? Chu Ling directly froze when she heard the words. Immediately, there was surprise and excitement floating on her pretty face, but then a trace of panic quickly appeared. Yeah, little ancestor. You can't call your slave girl your sister. You can just call slave girl Chu Ling. Stupid ass. Sister? Jiang Yun had a puzzled look on his face. In his heart, he was helpless. The class distinction here is really deeply rooted. Oops. It's Chu Ling. It's not a dumbass. don't add sister. Stupid ass sister. Chu Ling, don't add sister. My little ancestor. Stupid ass sister. Ha ha. As Jiang Yun looked at Chu Ling's anxious little appearance, he couldn't help but tease again and let out a cheerful baby laugh. What's the little one up to again? Laughing so hard? A soft voice rang out. It was only Mother who came to the head of the house. Ma'am. Chu Ling was startled and hurriedly turned around to salute. Sister stupid ass. Sister stupid ass. Jiang Yun shouted twice more, wanting to see what his mother's reaction was. If Mother was angry and wanted to punish the Chu Ling girl, he would simply have a cry and be done with it. However, from what he had observed over the past few days, his mother's temperament was very good, so she shouldn't be angry. Even if she was angry, she would probably just reprimand her twice. Stupid ass sister? Mother couldn't help but stare. Chu Ling, on the other hand, was trembling all over, and hurriedly knelt down and said, Madam, I don't know what happened. But the young master suddenly called out to his sister, and the slave girl couldn't persuade him. It was the slave girl who was disrespectful. The slave servant is incompetent. Please punish me. Ma'am. Well, it's okay, I taught Yuner to yell, so get up first. At that moment, she only saw her mother smile and come to sit down on the edge of the bed in a graceful manner. Madam taught you that? Chu Ling froze. Jiang Yun was also stunned. His mother hadn't taught him to call out to his sister or anything. Obviously this was deliberately said to Chu Ling. It was true that this mother of his really had a good heart. You little fellow, that's your Linger sister, not stupid ass sister. In the future, you will not be allowed to shout like that again. With a hint of reproach in her smile, Mother extended her white jade finger and tapped Jiang Yun's little nose, intending it as a chastisement. Sister spirit? Jiang Yun responded with a knowledgeable and well-behaved voice. Well, Sister Linger, Yuner is so good. Mother laughed. Ma'am, this cannot be. How can a slave girl allow the young master to call the young master sister? Chu Ling's astonished and terrified voice sounded again. We've reached this point. What's not to like? Besides, Yuner likes you this much. Calling you sister, he is also happy to do so. Could it be that you still resent it? Mother laughed again. Don't dare. How could a slave girl dare to dislike it? The main thing is that the slave girl. Well, if you don't mind, that's good. Then, Mother no longer paid attention to Chu Ling and picked up Jiang Yun, dotingly rocking him gently. Jiang Yun couldn't help but be amused and laugh openly. Of course, it was mainly because of the matter of the Chu Ling girl. Mrs. Chu Ling Fro's voice rang out. At this moment its eyes slightly red, quite some touch difficult to suppress the appearance. Gradually, the 8th month arrived. Training, 7 years in a mortal womb. Talent, evil god incarnate. Chance, luck, 1217. Jiang Yun's strength nowadays was already comparable to that of Hercules, but he froze until now to start crawling and moving his muscles a little. Little young master is so powerful, worthy of being a little young master. Learning to crawl so quickly, Chu Ling clapped joyfully on the sidelines. Jiang Yun was helpless and still a little embarrassed in his heart. This girl's bragging about him was just too brainless and blind. Of course, this probably also had something to do with the fact that he had now begun to pretend to be able to speak in a complete manner. Humph. I heard that the unicorn child is still swaddling and yelling for his mother. Our young master can even move around on his own. At this time, Chu Ling picked up Jiang Yun with a proud face and lifted him high. Jiang Yun couldn't help but roll his eyes. Did this girl like comparing him to that Qilin Zi so much? Into the night, Jiang Yun was lying quietly in bed, sleeping beside his mother. The evil god avatar, on the other hand, was roaming around everywhere in Xiyang town. At that exact moment, he was able to see a tall and strange figure quietly coming outside of Xiyang town. Mountain spirits. Jiang Yun froze, and soon had seen the figure scale over the low wall, coming towards the area of his house. He couldn't help but have a jolt. That is, he sat up, and let the evil god incarnation body up and stared at that figure, only to see under the dark night, that monster height than normal people 2 heads higher, all greenish gray, long mane, a bit like a fathead fish. Class old man face is quite strange and scary. It is the mountain spirit. What's wrong? Is it to pee? Cloudy. Mother noticed Jiang Yun's movement and also got up to inquire. Mother, I dreamed that a monster came this way. I was afraid. Jiang Yun opened his mouth. Oh, dreaming. It's okay. Mother is here. Nothing will happen. Yuner, don't worry about sleeping. Mother couldn't help but laugh. Mother, really have monsters come to make sister Linger lose sister. Be careful. Don't sleep so deeply, okay? Jiang Yun said with a serious face. Although there was a good house-suppressing talisman affixed to his home, he felt that the mountain spirit was not simple, and he really wasn't sure if the house-suppressing talisman could withstand it. Line it. Yuner, you stay here, don't go anywhere. For my mother to go out to order. Mother looked at Jiang Yun with slight hesitation. Then she got up and left. Aha! Jiang Yun responded, slightly relieved. However, he soon realized that the mountain spirit didn't seem to be targeting this area of his home, but was merely passing through here and then heading straight east. Surprised and curious in his heart, he had the evil god incarnate continue to follow. A short while later, Mother also returned to the room and coaxed Jiang Yun to sleep, and the evil god incarnation side has been following the mountain spirit, gradually but came to that Kirin Z family's fearless martial arts hall. Jiang Yun was even more surprised in his heart. How could a mountain spirit come here? It should be known that there are many martial artists in the Fearless Martial Arts Center, and the director, Ning Kuan, is said to have the strength to rival 100 years of martial arts masters in the mortal world. If there is no other reason, this mountain spirit specifically to come here, there is so a little bit of picking a hard bone to gnaw on the meaning of it. At this moment, with the arrival of the mountain spirit, the town hall talisman on the door beam of the martial arts center emitted a mysterious light, seemingly deterring the mountain spirit. With the status of the Fearless Martial Arts Center in Xiyang Town, this township talisman was basically from the hand of old Taoist Jinping. However, the goblin only stopped for a moment, and then walked halfway along the tall courtyard wall to where it was located in the backyard, and then directly climbed over the wall. Arriving in the backyard, the mountain spirit scanned the circle, his eyes quickly locked on the main house. Striding forward and went. This main house door beams on the townhouse talisman also immediately issued a mysterious light to deter the mountain spirit. But the mountain spirit simply did not take it seriously and continued to approach the main house. It also caused the light of the house-suppressing talisman to become more and more intense. Finally, at the moment the goblin completely approached the door of the main house, the house-suppressing talisman boomed and burned right through. Who's out there? A nervous, frightened young woman's voice came out of the house. It was followed by the sound of a wailing baby. Chapter 6, This Maid is Great. Bang! A popping sound. The mountain spirit heard the movement in the house, but directly broke the door. Mountain spirits, quickly come to the people. The goblins are coming. The goblins are coming. The young woman's exclamation of surprise rang out immediately. The entire martial arts center was soon alarmed. Jiang Yun, on the other hand, was surprised in his heart. Could it be that this mountain spirit's goal was not Kirin Z? By now there was a not inconsiderable crash in the house, and a tragic howl from a young woman. Immediately afterward, he saw the mountain spirit grabbing a wailing baby and running out. It was none other than that unicorn child. Bold demonic creature, quickly let go of my son. A shock of anger rang out, only to see a burly man holding a sword, bringing a dozen martial artists to the backyard swiftly, directly surrounding the mountain spirit. This burly man was the pavilion director, Ning Kuan, who was already at the level of a martial arts expert with 8 years of mortal fetus cultivation. However, the most crucial thing is the precious sword in its hand, which is rumored to be able to increase its strength by a few levels, and fight with martial arts masters. Roar! The mountain spirit let out a howl as demonic aura scurried across its body. Its large hand claws swept out, actually instantly casting a large swath of terrifying vines. At once, bang, 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 a cry of misery rang out. In just one look, Pavilion Master Ning Kuan and the 10 martial artists were all blown away with blood spurting from their mouths. All of them were seriously injured. The mountain spirit is not much of a battle. With that, baby Qilin Z is quickly over the wall out of the direction to come back, while Jiang Yun's evil god incarnation was still trailing the mountain spirit. In his heart, he was surprised and wondered what this demon was doing to capture Kirin Z. But this is also from the side to show that too much fame is indeed not a good thing, which are called demons to stare at. Quick, give chase. We must save my son. The curator, Ning Kuan, was enraged and endured his injuries, forcing himself to quickly climb up and also chase after him over the wall. But the mountain spirit was fast, and in no time at all, it had shaken off the injured Ning Kuan. Only the wailing and crying voice of the Qilin Z was left to guide the way. Jiang Yun's evil god incarnation was following without any pressure, but he could only watch now, not daring to make a sudden move. After all, he was not related to this Qilin Z, so there was really no need to attract unnecessary trouble for him. However, the mountain spirit hadn't escaped for long before Jiang Yun saw a black-robed figure leaping in front of it, quickly blocking the mountain spirit's path. He couldn't help but be surprised. Who was this? It looked mysterious and unpredictable. Roar! The mountain spirit, however, had already let out a strange cry, and with a wave of his large clawed hand, he was again casting terrifying vines to blast towards that black-robed figure. Poof! The black-robed figure, however, let out a woman's contempt, only to see its jade finger casually stretch out, and then a water dragon whistled out. The terrifying power easily disintegrated the mountain spirit's vine attack. Mountain spirits see this, cannot help but eyes show shocked horrified color, but at this moment its even screams cannot be issued, is being that water dragon immediately after penetrated the tall and strong body. This Jiang Yun couldn't help but be dismayed. What was this person's origin? Based on this hand alone, he was afraid that the Fire Spirit Taoist Temple's Fire Spirit Taoist master was far inferior. He hadn't heard that such a high-ranking person even existed within Qiyang town. Could it be that he's from outside? At the moment when the mountain spirit was about to fall to the ground, the black-robed figure's silhouette moved, instantly came to the mountain spirit's side, and casually received the Qilin Zi, who was still in the midst of crying, into his hands. Humph, this is a unicorn? I thought it was so great. Now it seems it's not as good as a hair of my little ancestor. If it wasn't for my little ancestor's dream today, I'm afraid I wouldn't have survived. The black-robed figure's eyes hidden in the dark shadows glanced at Kirin Zi Ning Xiaoyu, but he let out a sound that Jiang Yun was extremely familiar with, a silver bell-like pleasant voice. Chu Ling girl, this guy is Chu Ling. Jiang Yun was instantly shocked. He could be certain that he had definitely not heard it wrong. This was the voice of that girl Chu Ling. Moreover, those words, only that girl Chu Ling could say them. It was just that. How can this be possible? This has been at his side to him 100 respectful favor of the maid. The ability will be so good. Originally, he thought that this maid was just a mortal birth 6 years of practicing like this, but now it seems that she is properly the #1 strongest person in Qiyang town. And for the moment, it is still unfathomable kind. My feather! My feather! A shout approached. However, he saw that it was pavilion director Ning Kuan who had already chased after him, and behind him there were martial arts disciples chasing after him one after another in the distance. Chu Ling held the Qilin Zi Ning Xiaoyu in one hand, standing fixedly in place, waiting for the other party to come close, was coldly sending the Qilin Zi out. Nobleman, thank you for your help. Ning Kuan excitedly received his son, and casually flipped out another token to deliver. Noble person, this is the Iron Order of the Fearless Martial School. If you need any help in the future, just use this token to seek out the Fearless Martial Hall, and we will not shirk our duties. Although even with your ability you may not be able to look at the Fearless Martial School, Ning Kuan still hopes that you will accept this sincerity. When Chu Ling heard this, he hesitated slightly, and finally casually took the token and put it away. And then without saying a word, he turned around and leapt away. And in a moment, he was gone. Jiang Yun's evil god incarnation didn't bother chasing after him. Anyway, he already knew it was the Chu Ling girl. Where else could it go now but home? He was now more interested in seeing how this mountain spirit's subsequent affairs would be handled. At this moment, those individual disciples of the Fearless Martial School had already chased after them one after another. Master, junior brother has been saved. Someone seemed to have made a move just now. Hiss. How did this mountain spirit get killed? It looks like it's a one-strike kill. Right. This mountain spirit is obviously already in the Tani realm. Which master struck? Taoist fire spirit? The crowd of disciples were shocked and amazed as they carefully examined the mountain spirit's corpse. Ning Kuan just looked out in the direction that Chu Ling had left, and for a moment, he did not pay any attention to these individual martial arts hall disciples. While Jiang Yun's evil god incarnation's field of vision, he was able to see a figure quickly arriving from the other side, an old man in a dark red Taoist robe. This old man, who he also knew what he was from, was the Fire Spirit Taoist master of the Fire Spirit Taoist Temple. Curator Ning, what's going on here? I heard the commotion over here in the middle of the night, so I came right away. A mountain spirit? The Fire Spirit Taoist master came close to survey the corpse of the mountain spirit on the ground in amazement. Elder meets elder. Ning Kuan hastily saluted. Greetings, Elder Fire Spirit. Those individual martial arts disciples also saluted. There's no need to be polite. Curator Ning, what's going on? Taoist Fire Spirit inquired, his gaze falling back on the Kilinzi in Ning Kuan's arms, revealing a look of worry and affection. Back to senior. This night our Fearless Martial Hall encountered an attack by a mountain spirit, killing and injuring several disciples, and my son was plundered by this mountain spirit. Fortunately, we met a nobleman who came to our rescue, otherwise the consequences would have been unimaginable. Ning Kuan responded. A mountain spirit attacked the Fearless Martial School? This is for no reason at all. How could it pick you, the Fearless Martial School, to make a move? Have you guys ever messed with this mountain spirit? Could it have something to do with the disappearance of that child last time? Taoist Fire Spirit was surprised. No, I don't know exactly what the reason is. I couldn't even find that mountain spirit last time, and this time the mountain spirit should be aimed at my son. Because at the beginning of the floating dust Taoist priest and my son counted a fortune. Said my son will have this calamity, but will be saved by a nobleman. This has obviously been fulfilled. I wonder if Taoist floating dust will know the reason for this. Is that even possible? Taoist Fire Spirit was even more surprised. When Jiang Yun heard this, he couldn't help but be astonished. Taoist floating dust had already calculated what happened this night? Then did he or she already know of the existence of Chu Ling's girl? If I'm not mistaken, this mountain spirit is afraid to have a cultivation close to 100 years of Tony. I wonder who was this noble person in the town who was able to kill it? Old Taoist Jinping? His old man is skilled in the way of the symbol. And this wound doesn't look like it was caused by him, right? Could it be Taoist Master Floating Dust? It can't be. I remember that he was still almost able to step into the Tongyi realm. Taoist Fire Spirit already had a look of surprise on his face. Chapter 7. Completing the literacy initiation. Even the late generation doesn't know. That nobleman is clad in black robes, and his true face is not visible. Ning Kuan shook his head helplessly. Clad in black robes and not seeing his true face? This is strange. The only ones in our town who have stepped into the Tongyi realm are currently Old Man and Old Taoist Jinping. If it's not Old Man, could it really be Old Taoist Jinping? But that doesn't seem like his style. Did Taoist Floating Dust mention any information about this noble person of yours? Taoist Fire Spirit was surprised. No. This question, late generation also tried to explore at first, but Taoist Floating Dust said that this nobleman had exceeded his level of diffraction, and was not someone he could trigonize, and he said that he could only know that such an existence would appear. What? It's already beyond the level of Taoist diffractive arts of Taoist Master Food 1. Although the Floating Dust Taoist Master has not yet passed through the ghost, but the diffraction art attainments have been quite high. According to him, within 200 years of passing through the ghost, there is nothing that he can't trigrams out. It seems that this honorable person really does not come from a simple background. When exactly did such a person appear in our Qiyang town? Taoist Fire Spirit was instantly shocked. Zhang Yun was also stunned. That silly girl beside him who seemed to be obsequious and bullied was really so good. What exactly is her origin? And his mother? At this time another old man dressed in earth yellow robe arrived to inquire about the situation. But the visitor was Jinping Lao Dao. After an exchange of words, Old Taoist Jinping was also shocked. Shortly thereafter, people from the government arrived. A group of people carried the body of the mountain spirit to the government office to investigate and deal with it. Seeing that there was nothing substantial to pry into, Zhang Yun didn't pay much attention to it. He still had one more doubt right now, which was why that mountain spirit had come specifically to capture Kirin Z. Although he also knew that mountain spirits were in the habit of catching children to feed on. They usually pick the easy ones. If there was nothing to it, it wouldn't go and take a risk. Even if it was just a tiny bit risky. Could it be that this mountain spirit could still be brain dead? One night passed. Mother, where is Sister Linger? When Zhang Yun got up early in the morning, he realized that the girl Chu Ling wasn't even at home. Usually, this girl would have come to him early in the morning. Could it be that the girl didn't come back after going out last night? He originally thought that it should have gone straight home. Oh, that girl went to the mountains early to pick herbs. It might take a few days before she comes back. Mother laughed. Picking herbs? Zhang Yun was stunned. Suddenly remembered that his mother still had a pharmacy. Just did not expect that the medicine in the pharmacy was actually picked back by Chu Ling. Well, we're sold out of the best herbs in the pharmacy. And spirit, she knows where there's something to pick. Mother smiled and nodded. Oh, Zhang Yun nodded. He knew that good medicinal herbs were not easy to find. Most of them were only found in the deep, dangerous mountains. And with Chu Ling's girl's strength, she could naturally go deeper. So it was no wonder that her mother's pharmacy was able to open up. He now knows. Mother is in more than a year ago. Should be just pregnant with him that time to come to the Red Sun town. Medicine store those industries is also almost at that time to purchase. A person from outside. Such a short period of time. To that medicine store open good. Naturally not so easy thing. By midday, Zhang Yun's evil god incarnation had heard from everywhere in the town about last night's attack on the fearless martial hall by the mountain spirits. And it was rumored that the fearless martial hall had lost a maidservant and 3 disciples. And a dozen people, including the curator, were seriously injured. It was a story that went viral for a while. However, the most called Zhang Yun unexpected is that the unicorn son with its nobleman rumors. Now the town said that the unicorn son because of the extraordinary talent and got the attention of the mysterious master. So that the fearless martial arts school also stained the light. And the mysterious master to get in touch with the relationship. And this mysterious tall man was also rumored to be divine. Anyway, within the Red Sun town, no one can match the terrifying existence. For a time, the unicorn son's reputation has even reached an unprecedented height. In this regard, Zhang Yun only felt unable to laugh and cry. This if you call Chu Ling girl back, so that the learned about this matter, do not know of what reaction, the will not go directly to the door to look for trouble it? Several days passed, and the Chu Ling girl finally returned, only to see that she had brought back quite a few medicinal herbs that were quite rare for Qiyang town, such as several hundred years of old ginseng, 100 years of spirit angelica, 100 years of white pill roots, etc., and handed them over to her mother one by one. Little ancestor. After not seeing you for a few days, you seem to have lost weight. Let the slave girl take a good look. After Chu Ling saw her mother, she came and hugged Jiang Yun. Jiang Yun was speechless. It had only been a few days. How could he see that he had lost weight? Besides, he ate and slept well as usual. How could he lose weight? Little ancestor. Madam said that you had a dream earlier that demons came from outside. And then demons really did come from outside. What's going on here? Chu Ling wondered. I don't know. Jiang Yun shook his head with a confused look on his face. It made sense that he was still just a baby and couldn't figure out what was going on himself. Right? Didn't know that? Well, Chu Ling revealed a hint of helplessness. Subsequently the past few days, Chu Ling seems to have heard the outside of the Zi and the mysterious high man, those rumors. Cannot help but be annoyed in the head of the home to the Zi and fearless martial arts hall cursed for a long time. Seeing this, Jiang Yun could not help but laugh in his heart. It was also considered to have a better understanding of this girl's temperament. Although it was quite disliked by that Zi, it was not the kind of nature that would use martial arts to deceive others. And it was probably just a mouthful. The time came to the 10th month. Training, 8 years of mortal birth, talent, evil god incarnate, chance, luck, 1288. Jiang Yun is now considered to be at the level of a martial arts expert, and has begun to walk on his own, as well as begun to communicate with his family very fluently. The Chu Ling girl was even more joyful, and wanted to take Jiang Yun out shopping, but was decisively rejected by Jiang Yun, because Jiang Yun knew that since 10 months, he could talk and walk normally. It was good for the family to know, and it would be too eye-catching if he went out. Although he was now also clear that this somewhat crazy nature of Chu Ling's girl was largely due to the fact that her strength was strong enough to think that she could protect him. And this was largely the case. But this kind of thing that was too flashy and did more harm than good, he still avoided it. At this moment, Jiang Yun was casually flipping through the picture books that Chu Ling's girl had found for him in the courtyard, while borrowing his evil god incarnation to study with the female teacher at the Floating Life Book School. In fact, he should have practiced all the common words by now, and started to consider not coming this way anymore. Today might be the last day of his visit here, and it is also considered as a farewell call to Lu Fuzi. Lu Fuzi is the name given by the school children to the female teacher, the music of musical instruments. As the day wore on, Jiang Yun realized that he already recognized all the characters taught by Lu Fuzi, which he had alternately learned from the Red Sun Academy. This also basically meant that he had indeed completed his literacy initiation. Then, in the future, he could start going to the Red Sun Academy to concentrate on learning about those who had taken the meritocracy. After all, there were many benefits to obtaining a meritocracy, and the lure of cultivation resources alone was enough to make him toss and turn. Anyway, he didn't have much to do at the moment, and he didn't have any goal to aim for. After Lu Fuzi finished today's enlightenment program, it was time for the final self-study class. During this time, those students who had already completed their initiation and had begun practicing their preferred skills on their own could then seek out Lu Fuzi to solve any problems they encountered. So this self-study class wasn't of much use to Jiang Yun. He was usually bored, and only occasionally listened to Lu Fuzi solving the problems of these scholars. But he wasn't very interested anyway. After all, he didn't have that much energy to study these various survival skills, so it was good to listen to them once in a while. At the moment when Jiang Yun was looking to leave straight away, he couldn't help but have the evil god incarnation approach Lu Fuzi's side again to take a look. After all this time, it seemed that he had yet to take a serious look at what books Lu Fuzi was reading during his self-study lessons. In every self-study class, Lefebvre was the one who unrolled a volume of books and read them when there were no scholars to ask for clarification. In the past, Jiang Yun didn't recognize a few words, so he didn't bother to read more about what knowledge Lu Fuzi had taught himself. After all, he couldn't read it. After forming a habit over time, after he had recognized quite a few words, he didn't take it seriously anymore. Now on the occasion of parting, he is a time but cannot help but be curious. However, when he took a closer look at the contents of Lu Fuzi's scroll, he couldn't help but freeze. Chapter 8: Diffractive Techniques. The Art of Diffraction. The Art of Fortune Telling. Jiang Yun was surprised in his heart that what this Lu Fuzi had been studying was actually the art of trigonometry. This couldn't help but call to mind that floating dust Taoist master in the town instantly. Could he still acquire the same skills as the floating dust Taoist master here in Lu Fuzi? However, thinking about it, it shouldn't be possible. After all, if Lu Fuzi really had this kind of ability, what else would he be here as a husband? Jiang Yun calmed his excitement after a little searching, but out of curiosity, he still studied this diffractive arts knowledge in Lu Fuzi's hands carefully. As he gradually grasped the contents of the scroll, it was the more and more he realized that this seemed to be something that could really allow him to master the skill of Gua calculation. The content of this scroll was not particularly large, but it was so subtle that it was difficult for him to fully grasp it for a while. until the self-study class ended and the scholars all excused themselves and left the book school. Jiang Yun had yet to comprehend much of the contents of the scroll. It is good that Lu Fuzi is also still reading and watching, and did not put away the scroll. At dusk, when Mr. Le got up to go and do his chores, he still put the scrolls on the table, as if to facilitate his return later to continue reading. At night, Mr. Le lit a lamp and continued to read the scrolls. Jiang Yun was also able to use this as a means of continuing to comprehend the contents of the diffractive arts on the scrolls. Strangely enough, Lefebvre got up late at night to go to rest, and didn't put out the lights to put away the scrolls, still leaving them just like that. In this way, 3 days passed in a row. Jiang Yun had already initiated that volume of diffractive arts, training, 8 years of mortal birth, diffraction, mundane fetus, talent, evil god incarnate, chance, luck, 1291, diffraction mortal fetus, meaning that Jiang Yun was now able to deduce the condition and future changes of a person with mortal fetus cultivation, but only until the target's mortal fetus cultivation of 1 year. The mortal fetus cultivation level was also basically between a newborn baby and a teenager. In addition, besides being affected by the target's cultivation, the diffraction technique was also affected by the level of the diffraction technique. If the level of the other party's diffraction technique exceeded their own, then they would not be able to deduce the other party's situation and future changes. Jiang Yun meditated for a few moments, having thoroughly organized the knowledge of the diffractive arts that he had grasped. The diffractive art that he had acquired from Lu Fuzi now was the first Song diffractive volume. It could be cultivated to the Tongyu level of Gua calculation very smoothly, and if he wanted to continue upwards, he would either have to forcefully break through the bottleneck like raising his cultivation, or obtain the second volume of diffractive art, which would allow him to directly cross over the bottleneck. The cultivation of this diffractive art is also the same as the cultivation of one's own cultivation, where an ordinary person's cultivation improves once a year. If one wanted to improve quickly, one would either awaken a talent related to the diffractive arts, either that or enter a rare state of epiphany. And there is no related talent trigram calculator. A day can only count 3 trigrams only. Jiang Yun was now one of those who did not have the talent for diffractive arts, which meant that he would have to slowly simmer down year after year in order to cultivate diffractive arts as well. However, he did have one more ability, the Qi Luck ability. He was now certain that the Qi Luck he had accumulated was able to be used to directly cultivate diffractive arts. Thus, he immediately consumed a Qi fortune and attempted to cultivate the diffusion technique. He only felt that he had actually entered a state of epiphany in an instant. The power of the diffusion art was rapidly rising. Soon, training, 8 years of mortal birth, diffractive arts, 1 year in the womb, talent, evil god incarnate, chance, luck, 1290. A single Qi luck could actually allow him to rapidly raise the level of his diffractive art for a year. Without the slightest hesitation, Jiang Yun was consuming Qi luck one after another to enhance his diffractive arts. Diffractive arts, 2 years of mortal birth, luck, 1289. Diffractive arts, 3 years of mortal birth, luck, 1288. Diffractive arts, 4 years of mortal birth, luck, 1287. Diffractive arts, 10 years of mortal birth, luck, 1281. Diffractive arts, Tony, luck, 1, 280. Jiang Yun's diffractive art had already transcended the mortal world and crossed over to the Tony level. To pass through the ghosts means that the cultivator already has the ability to directly see ghosts and other strange monsters. The diffusion art through the ghost can only be in the trigrams, calculate the existence of ghosts and the like. If their own cultivation is not up to standard, is not able to see the ghosts with just the naked eye. Jiang Yun searched briefly before continuing to use his Qi to cultivate the diffraction art. Diffractive arts, Tony for 1 year, luck, 1279. Diffractive arts, the second year of Tony, luck, 1278. Diffractive arts, 3 years of Tony, luck, 1277. Diffractive arts, 80 years of Tony, luck, 1200. When the level of the diffractive art reached 80 years of Tony, Jiang Yun stopped his cultivation, for no other reason than that there were 1200 Qi luck left. The evil god incarnation needed to consume 300 Qi luck to manifest once. In that case, this was just enough to manifest 4 times, so he was saving it to make up a whole. In addition, he now knows that after 100 years of Tony is the bottleneck stage, and this bottleneck stage spans to Tony 1000 years this number of years. There was really no hurry. Next, he will use the new Qi every day to enhance the diffraction technique. So after 20 days, the diffraction technique will be 100 years of Tony. After Jiang Yun's thoughts settled in his mind, he couldn't help but curiously calculate the trigrams for himself. He concentrated, mobilizing the power of the diffraction art and quickly deduced it. Soon enough, he was able to see the changes in his own future, only to see that he stayed at home as usual, living his usual repetitive life of eating and sleeping. However, in this deduction of his, it was the presence of his mother and the Chu Ling maid that was missing. It could only be calculated that he was interacting with two unknown existences, as well as Sister Lu, who was in charge of the household chores. In addition, his evil god incarnation was also impossible to deduce. In that case, the Chu-Ling maiden and her mother, as well as his own evil god incarnation, were all beyond his current level of diffractive arts. When he had seen the strength of Chu-Ling's girl before, he had already guessed that his mother wouldn't be simple either, and now he had sort of confirmed his guess. However, what surprised him next was that his deduction of his own future changes hadn't even lasted more than a day before it came to an abrupt end. What's going on here? Jiang Yun couldn't help but be somewhat dismayed. Immediately, he retried to deduce himself once more, but the result was the same. He was immediately depressed, but for a while he could not think of any problems. He sought to find someone else to fortune tell to see. Thinking of this, Jiang Yun's attention naturally fell on Lu Fuzi, who was under the evil god incarnate's nose. At this time, Lu Fuzi was still sitting at the table, seemingly still studying that diffractive art Song diffraction scroll. Hiss, what on earth could this Lu Fuzi be? I also wonder if I can trigonize him through the evil god incarnation across the sky? Jiang Yun was curious and did as he thought, immediately attempting to deduce it to Lu Fuzi. The diffusion technique rose, and instantly the feedback came, and he could now be sure that he was able to directly deduce the target through the evil god incarnation. However, the results that came back from the current Leafman were the ones that directly froze Jiang Yun. This Lu Fuzi even exceeded the scope of his diffractive art Tong use 80 years of Gua calculation as well. Chapter 9, The Daily Hobbies of a Reclusive Bigot. What's going on? Jiang Yun couldn't help but be surprised. Could it be that Lu Fuzi was also a profoundly powerful person? Or perhaps, it was actually that Lu Fuzi's level of diffractive arts had surpassed his. However, if Lu Fuzi's level of diffractive arts had already surpassed that of his Jiang Yun, then what was the reason for him to still be here all these days reading the first Song diffractive arts volume? After all, have mastered the first volume of the diffraction technique. And the diffraction technique has also reached more than 80 years of the Tongyi. Continue to repeat reading is not much sense, right? Can't it also be for the sake of learning from the past? At this time, the evil god incarnate had already seen Lu Fuzi casually put away the first Song diffusion scroll of that diffusion art slowly. Seeing this, Jiang Yun felt even more inexplicably subtle in his heart. However, no matter which situation it was right now, it was enough to show that Lu Fuzi was a profoundly talented person. Just Lu Fuzi actually have this kind of ability, but also here to open a private school, and for what? It looks like it's not like he is trying to reap any benefits. Can it be that this is the rumored daily hobby of a reclusive big brother? A day passes. Training, 8 years of mortal birth. Diffractive arts, 81 years of Tongyi. Talent, evil god incarnate. Chance. Luck, 1. 200. Jiang Yun applied his newly increased chi to his diffractive art cultivation, reaching 81 years of Tongyi. Today, he was able to count 3 hexagrams again, and he first counted another hexagram for himself, finding that it was still a repetitive routine and still only counting the changes of the day. He was immediately depressed, and after a little searching, he let the evil god incarnation run to the Red Sun Academy, to find the dean and husband there to tell fortunes and see. As a result, he found that the dean of the Qiyang Academy and the highest prestige of the teacher are just ordinary people, and are all mortal 2 years of cultivation, basically stayed in the academy to teach throughout their lives, and then very ordinary old age, but also did not suffer any hardship. In this way, Jiang Yun was also basically certain that there was nothing wrong with his own diffraction art, then only being able to calculate a day's worth of future changes in oneself. Then the problem should be with oneself. Afterwards, he left the evil god incarnation to the floating life school to see the situation of Lu Fuzi, only to see Lu Fuzi again as usual that enlightenment to the students. And when it comes to self-study class, Lu Fuzi is not reading that diffusion art scrolls, read the astronomical knowledge. This could not help but cause some indescribable confusion to arise in Jiang Yun's heart, as if there was something he had overlooked. Gradually, 20 days passed. Training, 9 years in the mortal world. Diffractive arts, Tongyi Centennial. Talent, evil god incarnate. Chance. Luck, 1. 200. Jiang Yun was already 11 months old, and his cultivation had reached the 9th year of mortal birth, which was the level of a martial arts master. The diffractive art, on the other hand, had reached 100 years of passing phenomena, which meant that it had reached a bottleneck. If he couldn't find a second volume of diffractive arts to learn, he would have to slowly simmer down until the diffractive arts had reached 1,000 years of passing phenomena, and use forced epiphanies to cross over to a higher level. Only in that case, it would cost a lot of chi luck, which he couldn't afford to give up. Jiang Yun, who was helpless in his heart, couldn't help but have the evil god incarnation come back to the floating life book school. These days, because already literate enlightenment, he is no longer interested in floating school. After that, he went to the Red Sun Academy, wanting to learn the knowledge of the examination. but found that the content is too boring, also has little interest. As a result, he ended up letting the evil god incarnate into the town to watch everywhere, and secretly tell people's fortunes, peeping into other people's lives to go. In the past few days, the town, the famous characters, all asked him to count over again: Fire Spirit Taoist, Jinping Old Taoist, Floating Dust Taoist, Fearless Martial Arts Museum Director Ning Kuan, County Minister Di Tong Chu, Qilin Zi. These, he borrowed the evil god incarnation one by one fortune-telling. That Qilin Zi is indeed as the previous rumor Floating Dust Taoist priest counted the trigrams. Under normal circumstances without the intervention of variables, it will be around 7 years old to step into the mortal birth, 10 years of martial arts master realm, before the age of 20 years old to transcend the mortal birth, stepping into the realm of the Tongyi realm. Then Ning Kuan, the director of the Fearless Martial Arts School, and Di Tong Chu, the county minister. These two guys don't have a very good life, and both will be sacrificed in a scourge in the future. And this scourge seems to be caused by a ghost baby. Anyway, in the future encounters of these two, Zhang Yun saw the figure of the infant grievance spirit, and it seemed to be a scourge that jeopardized the entire Red Sun town. This also made him think of the mountain spirit that had come to capture the infant and the Qilin Zi earlier, and wondered if there could be any connection between them. On the other hand, old Taoist Jinping's destiny was better, able to live out the rest of his life in peace. His cultivation was at the Tongyi 30-year rune art level. Zhang Yun couldn't calculate it. It was clearly beyond his diffractive art level. The last two, Taoist Fire Spirit and Taoist Floating Dust, Zhang Yun couldn't even count them right now. So it seemed that the two should have exceeded his level of diffraction in cultivation and diffraction respectively. However, what surprised Zhang Yun was that when he failed to deduce the two, Taoist Fire Spirit and Taoist Floating Dust, both of them were discovered. These two were both very vigilant in locking onto the evil god incarnate's location. Luckily, both of these two were unable to detect the evil god incarnate's presence and could only end up frowning in confusion. In this way, it also made Zhang Yun another additional doubt. He remembered that when he secretly fortune-telling Lu Fuzi failed before. Lu Fuzi, but there was no reaction. At this time, within the Floating Life School, Mr. Lu was enlightened with the students as usual. Zhang Yun was bored and watched for most of the day, and for some reason froze and didn't want to leave today. Gradually, the self-study sessions arrive. Lefebvre unfolded a scroll on the table and perused it. When Zhang Yun saw this, he couldn't help but feel a stirring in his heart, and it was also instantly clear what his own subconscious was trying to wait for by coming here. He was subconsciously hoping that he would be able to see the second volume of the diffractive arts here in Le Fuzi. But, was it really possible? With some apprehension and nervousness, Zhang Yun allowed the evil god incarnation's gigantic head to come above Lu Fuzi's head and looked towards the scroll on the table. When he read the contents of the scroll, he was immediately stunned in disbelief. It's really the second volume of the diffusion technique, the scheming diffusion volume. Lu Fuzi here actually has the second volume of the diffusion technique. Zhang Yun was instantly in a whirlwind of thoughts in his mind. Why is it such a coincidence? Could something so coincidental really happen in this world? He had just completed his literacy initiation with Lu Fuzi before, and then he saw the cultivation of the diffractive art. Those days, Lu Fuzi also so placed the first volume of the diffractive arts Song diffractive scroll on his desk without putting it away. And at night, he did not turn out the light. The result allowed him to concentrate and learn straight through. And after he had mastered the first volume of the diffractive art, Lu Fuzi happened to put away the first volume of the diffractive art again. Now, when he had reached the bottleneck of the diffractive arts Tongyi 100 years, Lu Fuzi had coincidentally taken out the second volume of the diffractive arts. It couldn't be that Lu Fuzi also happened to reach the bottleneck of the first volume of the diffractive art today and started the cultivation of the second volume. It also happened to be the time when he came to snoop around. Chapter 10, The Mountain Spirit Comes Again. Zhang Yun had a million speculations in his mind, and vaguely, he seemed to have an answer. But right now, he didn't want to think deeply about it. He would first comprehend the second volume of this diffusion technique. Gradually, 3 days passed. Zhang Yun, however, was in the same situation as he had been with the first volume of the diffractive art before, and he was able to comprehend the second volume of the diffractive art very smoothly. Training, 9 years in the mortal world. Diffractive arts, insight, talent, evil god incarnate, chance, luck, 1202, insightfulness is the realm above Tongyi. At this moment, Zhang Yun has some mixed feelings to try again to trigram counting up Lu Fuzi 2. The result is still trigram counting out the existence of future changes. Husband? Students are taught. Zhang Yun couldn't help but mumble in his heart. And then he had the evil god incarnation exit the Floating Life Book School, and at the same time began to go to the vicinity of the book school to see if he could learn more information related to Lu Fuzi. As for the diffractive arts, he was in no hurry to raise them now. This was because he now knew that at this stage of insight, It took 300 years to reach the bottleneck, while the bottleneck stage of the Insight realm spanned 3,000 years. With his current amount of luck, he really can't be in a hurry. In addition to the current Qiyang town, there are not many people that he can't calculate. It would be better to first save up his luck to 1500, and then see if he wants to directly raise it. Late night, all was silent within Red Sun town, and there was basically no longer anywhere with a lively scene for Jiang Yun to go to. He then let the evil god incarnation return to the courtyard, and then sneaked into the Chu Ling girl's room, and tried to deduce it to the sleeping Chu Ling girl. He was really a bit curious as to what level of cultivator this girl beside him was. However, Jiang Yun's deduction went on, and the result was surprisingly also the existence of trigrams not being able to calculate the situation in future changes. This also basically means that the Chu Ling girl's cultivation is at least 1 year above Caveming. After all, this girl obviously didn't know diffractive arts. At this time, the sleeping Chu Ling suddenly opened his eyes, killing intent biting and alert as he looked toward the location where the evil god incarnate's gigantic head was located. Jiang Yun couldn't help but be taken aback. It seemed that an insufficient level of diffractive arts would indeed be discovered. At the same time, he realized that his mother, who had fallen asleep beside him, had also instantly woken up, apparently sensing the movement on the Chu Ling girl's side. Jiang Yun only pretended to be asleep and didn't know anything. He then noticed his mother carefully getting out of bed. Then, he met his mother's arrival in the room of the Chu Ling maid. Spirit? What happened? Mother swept the room warily. Madam, I don't know if it was an illusion just now, but the slave girl felt as if someone was spying on the slave girl. Chu Ling had gotten out of bed, and her vigilant eyes looked again at the location of the evil god's incarnation above her head. Someone spying on you? I didn't see anything out of the ordinary outside. There doesn't seem to be much of a hiding place here. Does there? Mother also frowned as she glanced over to the evil god incarnate. Well, it should be the slave girl who is overly sensitive. Chu Ling still had some doubts and answered. No, with your cultivation, it's bound to not be that. Perhaps there really is some kind of situation going on. Could this be someone from over there? Hush, don't speculate wildly. Maybe it's just an accident. Just be more careful during this time. Mother made an instant gesture of silence. Well, slave girl knows. Chu Ling nodded. Mother then exited Chu Ling's room and returned to Jiang Yun's side to sleep. At this moment, Jiang Yun's heart was filled with thoughts. It looked like Mother and Chu Ling girl should have hid in the Red Sun Town seclusion for some reason. The two of them had reacted like birds of a feather, which also made him feel quite sorry for them. In the future, he should not feel free to explore the situation of his mother and Chu Ling's girl. In the next few days, Jiang Yun, because of his boredom and itchy hands, secretly went to give Taoist Fire Spirit and Taoist Floating Dust another fortune. And this time, he was able to figure out the two's condition and future changes. Taoist Fire Spirit, at the age of 93, with a cultivation level of 301 years of Tongyi, possessed the Fire Spirit talent. Cultivators with the Fire Spirit talent were able to raise their cultivation faster when practicing fire-based techniques. In addition, in the fortune telling, this Fire Spirit Taoist master will also die a heroic death in the future in that scourge caused by the ghost baby. As for Taoist Master Floating Dust, he is exactly 100 years old this year, with 99 years of cultivation as a mortal, and 333 years of diffractive technique Tongyi, possessing the gift of heart awareness. Diffractive arts through the ghost of 333 years, is the bottleneck stage. That is to say, this Floating Dust Taoist master in the hands of No Diffractive Arts Volume 2, Lu Fu Zi, the private school teacher, is the one who has the second volume of the diffractive art, and maybe even more. And it also looked so young. This could not help but make Jiang Yun's heart surprised and curious. What exactly could this husband Lu be? Taoist Master Floating Dust's mind awareness talent, on the other hand, was in the area of diffractive arts, cultivating diffractive arts much faster than ordinary people, and he can count 5 trigrams a day. However, the Floating Dust Taoist long cultivation relatively speaking, but is much slower, now are 100 years old, only 99 years of mortal fertilizer. Get it wrong. Maybe this crane to the west. Fortunately, in the fortune telling, the Floating Dust Taoist priest will cross the bottleneck of 100 years of mortal birth when he is just about to die, and reach the realm of Tongyi. At that time, he will be able to live another 50 years. Moreover, his diffusion technique will also be greatly improved. Time fades away. Training, 10 years in the mortal world. Diffractive arts, insight, talent, evil god incarnate, chance, luck, 1232. Jiang Yun was 12 months old and his cultivation had reached the level of a martial grandmaster. The next step was the long bottleneck stage. At this rate of progress, it was no surprise that he would step into the Tongyi realm only at the age of 10. Late at night, his evil god incarnation roamed everywhere within Qiyang town as usual. Suddenly, he saw again outside the town of Qiyang, there is a tall and strange figure came quietly. This time this figure is taller than normal 2.5 heads, covered in greenish gray, long mane, like a fathead fish class old man face weird and scary, and is a mountain spirit. Mother, I dreamed of a monster coming again. Can you speak to Sister Linger and Sister Lu and tell them to be more careful? Jiang Yun immediately got up and said. This time, he wasn't afraid that the mountain spirit would plague his family, but rather, he remembered the scourge of ghost babies that he had calculated when he had given the fiery spirit Taoist master and the others his fortune-telling. He vaguely felt that these mountain spirits might have something to do with this matter. If that was the case, it was possible for him to intervene in advance now to change the scourge of ghost babies that would occur in the future. He already knows. In general, each person's fate is basically fixed. Only some special variables will change the destiny trajectory. The existence of a fortune teller who can spy on other people's destinies is capable of generating variables. Are there monsters coming again? Okay, you wait here obediently. Mother got up and looked at Jiang Yun with a surprised and odd expression before getting out of bed and leaving the room. Aha! Jiang Yun naturally did not really want to tell Chu Ling to be careful or anything. After all, Chu Ling's terrifying strength was clear to him now. Mainly want to see Chu Ling girl will still go out to clean up that mountain spirit. Before Chu Ling is probably out of curiosity. And this time Jiang Yun is not sure whether it will still go out. He could only say that he would give it a try. At this moment, he thought of something, and immediately borrowed the evil god incarnation to deduce it again on the mountain spirits that had already arrived in the town. He wanted to see if he could calculate any intelligence from it. Within moments, there was a result. This mountain proficient pixie is 130 years of cultivation, and is in a state of being controlled by the soul regeneration technique. Chapter 11, The Evil God Cultists. Soul-taking is an evil technique commonly used to control ghosts and mountain spirits. It can also be used to control people, but it is easier to be seen. And in Jiang Yun's trigrams, this mountain spirit had already mutilated 40 to 50 lives over the decades, and was taken under control by a black-robed evil cultivator with 3 ghost babies a month ago before he was called in to capture one of the town's infants. So it seems that this mountain spirit's actions are really related to the future scourge of ghost babies. Jiang Yun was surprised, and at the same time, he somewhat regretted that he had let his mother go and inform the Chuling girl too early, so that he couldn't use it to deduce more future information about that evil cultivator. This was because in the trigrams, this mountain spirit would soon be obliterated by an unknown existence. Then this unknown existence, 9 times out of 10, was Chuling girl. After all, within the town nowadays, the existences that he couldn't count out were currently just Chuling girl, mother, and Lu Fuzi, the 3 of them. However, while Jiang Yun was in a moment of chagrin, the evil god incarnate's side saw a black-robed figure in the shadows, trailing the mountain spirit from afar. If it wasn't for the fact that his evil god incarnate's body was huge and had an excellent overlooking view, it would have been difficult to spot this figure. This person shouldn't be Chuling girl. Looking at the body type is all wrong. Jiang Yun searched briefly, and then he deduced on that black-robed figure. Soon, he obtained the results. This man was actually a member of the evil god congregation. In the fortune-telling, the man was named Liang Qingyang, formerly known as Liang Niu, who was born in a poor village in the middle of the countryside since he was a young man in hardship. His parents were too honest and suffered from bullying and oppression by the village people, and then they both fell sick and died of overwork. Lost both parents Liang Qingyang, the house and fields were seized by the village people, and since then has been living like a wild dog like days. Hungry can only be in the mountains to dig wild vegetables to eat, gnawing on the bark of trees. Sleepy can only be secretly looking for cow sheets to sleep in a pigsty, but also continue to suffer from the same village children's bullying and insults. On the day when Liang Qingyang was about to die, it so happened that the evil god cultists came to the village, and Liang Qingyang, because of the monstrous grievances he had accumulated over the years, was taken into the evil god cult, and was officially renamed Liang Qingyang. Afterwards, he helped the evil god cultists to bloodwash the whole village. From then on, Liang Qingyang had become a loyal congregation of the evil god cult, and his tragic past since childhood had long since distorted his psyche, so as long as he was able to accomplish the great cause of the evil god cult, he would stop at nothing. Within the cult of evil god, there are many other congregations that are similar to him, and the great cause of the evil god cult is to overthrow the Dechu dynasty and establish a fair world that honors the evil god. This fairness refers to taking back all kinds of resources from the hands of the powerful and noble classes of the Dechu dynasty, so that all the congregations are qualified to enjoy them. Now Liang Qingyang is 50 years old and has cultivated 212 years of Tongyi. He has also mastered the soul regeneration technique, and the level of soul regeneration is not projected for the time being. He or she had obtained the method of refining ghost babies not too long ago, and had currently refined 3 ghost babies, which were at the cultivation levels of 55 years of mortal birth. 73 years of mortal birth, and 96 years of mortal birth. In addition, Jiang Yun deduced that this Liang Qingyang would leave Qiyang town completely this night after that mountain spirit was killed, go somewhere else to continue refining the ghost baby, and then come back to take revenge for his successive grudges of being hindered in his plans after the ghost baby had been refined to completion. However, what shocked Jiang Yun the most was that he had actually seen the silhouette of the evil god statue worshipped by the evil god cult from Liang Qingyang's life was almost identical to his evil god avatar. So he had really become an evil god, or had there ever been a guy who had awakened the same talent as him who had appeared? At this time, there was already a new movement on the mountain spirit's side, only to see that the monster had snatched a baby from a family's house. The cries of the baby and the cries for help of the baby's parents rang out in succession, but before the goblin could run far, another black-robed figure was soon seen arriving quickly, stopping the goblin in its tracks. Jiang Yun instantly saw that this black-robed figure should be the Chuling girl. It seems that this girl still has a good heart. At this moment, the mountain spirit was furious and quickly exerted the power of wood to attack Chuling. Chuling was still casually pointing, and it was a water dragon that obliterated the mountain spirit. The evil god cultist Liang Qingyang, who was hidden in the shadows, froze when he saw the situation, and then he quietly left. Chuling, on the other hand, snatched the baby in the hands of the mountain spirit, placed it in a more conspicuous position under the eaves of a side, and also quietly left. The end is a good deed without leaving a name. And after Jiang Yun's evil god avatar followed Liang Qingyang to the edge of the town, he watched helplessly as he left. He was in a very mixed mood now. Now, it seemed that the future scourge of ghost babies in Qiyang town was something that could not be changed, because he had guided Chuling to intervene. He had already changed the trajectory of this destiny, but he had only delayed the original scourge of the ghost babies for some time. In addition, it was the matter of the evil god cult and his evil god incarnation. The evil god that the evil god cult believed in was basically certain to be his evil god incarnation. What the hell does that mean? Is it possible that he'll really come out to cause trouble in the future? That's impossible, isn't it? He thought he still had a normal outlook, not to mention an antisocial personality. At the most, he is only clear about his grudges and will always pay back when he has a grudge. It's just a matter of time. Jiang Yun quickly gave up dwelling on it and recovered his mood. It was pointless to dwell on it that much since he couldn't think of any results for the time being anyway. The next day, Jiang Yun again borrowed the evil god incarnation to go to the fire spirit Taoist several fortune-telling, and found that these people still did not change the sacrifice and the downfall of the ghost baby scourge. Forget it. Jiang Yun was helpless. He was too lazy to care that much. It wasn't like he was a great benefactor anyway, and he was now carrying an evil god incarnation talent. Without the intention of running to the evil god cult to aid and abet the evil, it was all considered a great good deed. Little ancestor. I heard that last night there really was another demon outside. Wow. Little ancestor. How can you be so powerful? How can you know all this? You are truly worthy of being our little ancestor. At this moment, in the courtyard, Chuling was hugging Jiang Yun with a face of amazement. Ha, is this awesome? Can't you dream about this, Sister Linger? Jiang Yun inquired with a feigned naivety. How could I? How could a slave girl have such skills? You're very powerful. Young master. Oh, Sister Linger, do we have a pharmacy at home? Jiang Yun suddenly inquired. Yeah, why? I'd like to stop by the pharmacy. Jiang Yun responded. The reason why he had this proposal was because some time ago, when he was bored and looking around for someone to tell his fortune, he had counted on a long-time laborer there at the medicine store. And soon this long-time laborer would bring big trouble to the medicine store. He had to share his mother's worries. Ha, young master, you want to go to the pharmacy? Oh, the slave girl knows. You want to find an excuse to go out and play, don't you? That's right. You haven't been allowed to go out for so long, so you must be curious. Giggle. Chuling laughed daintily. Right. So can I go to the pharmacy now? Sister Spirit, I can't decide that. I'll have to ask madam. Otherwise, the slave girl would be happy to take young master out to play. Chuling laughed. Then let's go ask mother? Well, slave girl, help you ask for the young master. After Chuling said that, she brought Jiang Yun back to the head of the house, then informed his mother of his intentions. Cloud, you want to go to the pharmacy? Mother was surprised. Well, just go watch for a while. Jiang Yun nodded his head. Well, you're still young now. It's dangerous outside. Mother is not worried. Let's wait until you grow up some more. Chapter 12, The Great Water washes over the Dragon King's temple. Ha, mother, with Sister Linger taking me there, I'm guaranteed to be fine, and I'll be very obedient. Mother, don't worry. Jiang Yun was instantly anxious. This mother was truly caring for him. With a strong person like Maiden Chuling protecting him, she was still worried about him encountering any danger outside? Who else in this Red Sun town could beat Chuling Maiden right now? Yes, Ma'am, the slave girl will protect the young master and will not let anything happen to him. Moreover, young master is already a year old. It's not good to keep him at home all the time. Chuling also chimed in. You are just that. Take yourself out for a walk for your mother. Mother said helplessly. Aha! But the main thing the child wants to do is go to the drugstore. Jiang Yun hurriedly said. He felt that the implication in his mother's words was likely just to take him for a casual walk around the outside neighborhood to perfunctorily pass. Got it. Take you to the pharmacy. Mother responded helplessly. Thank you, Mother. Jiang Yun was overjoyed. A few moments later, Jiang Yun was led out the door by his mother in Chuling. He was held all the way by Chuling. At this time, Mother was still wearing a veil. Along the way, Chuling happily introduced Jiang Yun to the street. Jiang Yun, on the other hand, pretended to be happy and responded. His evil god avatar had been hanging around outside all this time, and he was only more familiar with the environment here than Chuling's girl. After some time, several people had arrived at the most lively center of the town. You can just see that it is surrounded by all kinds of food, sideshows, tea shops, clothes stores, and so on. Mother's Iyun medicine shop was slightly off the street, but because it had made a name for itself by being able to have rare and precious medicinal herbs from time to time, there were quite a few customers. When Jiang Yun entered the medicine store along with his mother in Chuling, the middle-aged shopkeeper in green and gray robes and the 3 longtime workers were busy greeting customers. Donger, the shopkeeper's eyes were sharp, and the first time he saw his mother, he hurriedly put down his hands and walked out quickly from within the counter. Greetings to the proprietor, Miss Linger, and this is... The shopkeeper first bowed to his mother in Chuling, then his surprised and curious eyes looked at Jiang Yun who was in Chuling's arms. This is my baby, Mother responded. So it's young master. I've met the young master. The shopkeeper hurriedly saluted Jiang Yun again. Jiang Yun only let out a happy laugh in response. In front of outsiders, he still preferred to act ordinary, as he didn't like to be noticed by too many people. Young master is so cute and eloquent. The shopkeeper gave another compliment with a fond smile on his face. Speak to me about the state of the pharmacy these days. Mother spoke up. Yes, proprietor. The shopkeeper immediately reported in careful detail. At this moment, Jiang Yun then looked at a longtime laborer who was in the middle of a busy day. I only saw that this longtime laborer had a square face and was somewhat handsome, and on the surface, he seemed to be quite a reliable person. His conversation with customers was eloquent, and his hands and feet were also very sharp. Judging from these performances alone, it was already quite a good fellow. However, in Jiang Yun's fortune-telling, this person was the one who would sell out his mother's pharmacy for profit in the future. And while Jiang Yun was looking at this longtime laborer, the longtime laborer also glanced over to his mother's side from time to time, and even revealed a gentle and affectionate smile to Jiang Yun. Seeing this, Jiang Yun also pretended to let out a cheerful laugh. One thing on the surface, one thing in the dark, who wouldn't be able to do that? At this moment, out of the corner of his eye, he was able to see a number of people coming into the medicine store. Boss, there's big business. Hurry over. A woman's loud voice rang out. Jiang Yun froze, his eyes looking over, but he saw a beautiful woman holding a cute infant child of about a year old, followed by 2 martial artists, accompanied by a large, fat woman, arriving. The unicorn child? Jiang Yun was slightly stunned as his gaze fell on the 1-year-old infant. He had occasionally gone to wonder about the condition of this little celebrity in the town, which was why he had seen this fellow many times through his evil god incarnation. So naturally he recognized him at a glance. That beautiful woman, on the other hand, was this Kalinzi's own mother, Mrs. Ning. As for that big fat woman, she was the neighbor of the fearless martial arts hall, Dame Ru. She often looked for opportunities to flatter and please Mrs. Ning, so the two had a good relationship, and it also often take advantage of this relationship, and people to show off. And just now the loud voice, also is this Ru Daniang. Mother and the shopkeeper also noticed the arrival of Lady Ning and Qilin Zi, and both froze. Although Chu Ling's face was as usual, there was more or less a color of dislike for the visitor under her eyes. Oh, so it's Mrs. Ning and Dame Ru who have come to visit. I'm really sorry. I still have some things to do here. Tian Feng, why don't you hurry up and entertain your honored guests? The shopkeeper reacted and hurriedly shouted to the longtime laborer who would sell out the pharmacy in the future. Yes, Meng Tianfeng answered, and immediately stepped out sharply to entertain Lady Ning and Kirin Zi, yet not before he approached. Boss, what do you mean? Dame Ru pushed Meng Tianfeng away, and her obese body came up to the shopkeeper, pointing her nose at him and yelling, even Mrs. Ning and Qilin Zi dare to neglect us? You don't want to run this pharmacy anymore. The shopkeeper immediately had an unsightly face, but still politely opened his mouth and explained. No, it is mainly this person beside the little one. What's wrong with the one next to you? Can it be some big shot? The county minister's wife? Nowadays, the Kirin-Z Fearless Martial Arts School is still covered by a great master behind it. What kind of cat or dog can compete with that? Don't think that just because you have some rare medicinal herbs, you can really take yourself seriously. Believe it or not, we'll make it impossible for you to open this shitty pharmacy at any time. Ru Danyang did not wait for the shopkeeper to finish. Is a round of mocking taunts. Spittle is flying. Jiang Yun couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth. What a good dog. No, a good pig. But whenever he saw an opportunity, he was attentive. Moreover, the absolute master in his mouth was afraid that he was referring to Chu Ling's girl, which was really a big rush of water to the Dragon King's temple. Alright, Ru Nyang, don't be so agitated. When people open their doors for business, there's always a first come, first served. Otherwise it's not good to offend a guest. A light voice rang out, but Mrs. Ning opened her mouth to persuade. However, to see her cold face, her heart is probably also dissatisfied with the shopkeeper's practice. It is just that she is more concerned about her face, so she will not be as shrewish as Ru Danyang. Alas, good sister, you are just too easygoing in nature, and that's why you let anyone dare to bully you. Don't worry, I'm here. I won't make you suffer. Danyang Ru spoke with Mrs. Ning with a look of heartache. At once, this caused Mrs. Ning to reveal a look of relief and gratitude. When Jiang Yun saw this, he couldn't help but roll his eyes. These two goods are still self-moved on? The Chu Ling on the side even bristled, her disgusted color showing. Ahem, you two honored guests. In fact, the one next to you is the proprietor of our pharmacy. And the shopkeeper always had a chance to intervene. With a single sound, the scene instantly fell into dead silence. Mrs. Ning and Dame Ru both had stiffened faces and looked extremely embarrassed. Kirin-Z, who was being held by Mrs. Ning, on the other hand, had a subtle look on his face. A bit of a faceless look on his face. Oops, boss, why didn't you say so earlier? So it was all just a misunderstanding. You really are. It's all our own people. Our own people. Dame Ru reacted and hurriedly tried to round up the situation. So this sister is the proprietor of the Ian medicine shop? Truly young and promising. Nice to meet you. Mrs. Ning also laughed. Mother, however, was silent, not responding for a moment. Whose is this cute little doll? It's really good looking. Dame Ru's eyes suddenly landed on Jiang Yun, and as she spoke, her large, obese hand lifted up and was about to pinch towards his little face. Jiang Yun couldn't help but stiffen his face as a feeling of nausea instantly surged through his body. Chapter 13, The Pig Demon mentioned in the picture book. What do you want? Don't touch my young master. A chortle sounded. However, it was Chu Ling who immediately protected Jiang Yun and took a step back. Jiang Yun was instantly relieved. This girl was simply his own sister. Otherwise, he was afraid that he would have to take it upon himself to greet that Ru dame. You! Dame Ru couldn't help but show a look of annoyance. Are you Mrs. Ning? What a pleasure to meet you. But are you here to buy herbs? At this time, Mother was speaking with Mrs. Ning. Yes. I need some herbs for my family's year's medicinal bath. I couldn't find any of sufficient vintage in other pharmacies, so I could only come over here to take a look. So I don't know if I have any. Mrs. Ning responded. Dame Ru's anger couldn't help but be temporarily interrupted. Shopkeeper Lu, you should entertain your honored guests first. The matter of the medicine store, talk to me later. Mother and the shopkeeper commanded. Okay. The shopkeeper hurriedly answered, then invited the few people from Mrs. Ning to the side. Please have some tea, proprietor. At this time, that Meng Tianfeng was the one who obediently held a cup of hot tea and handed it to his mother. No need. Mother waved her hand slightly. Good. I wonder if there's anything else the proprietor needs from my little one? Meng Tianfeng nodded, and again respectfully inquired. No. What's your name? Jiang Yun did not wait for his mother to finish, but he was the first to open his mouth and let out a childish voice. Mother couldn't help but stare. Meng Tianfeng also froze and looked at Jiang Yun in surprise, then smiled and said with Jiang Yun, back to young master. Junior Meng Tianfeng, do you like my mother? And why did you keep sneaking glances at my mother just now? Jiang Yun inquired again. Meng Tianfeng's face instantly changed, and he hastily shook his head. No, how could I dare? I was just worried that the proprietor would have something to order so that I could help in time. Young master, don't misunderstand. One look at you and you're a thief. Jiang Yun, however, laughed cheerfully. Meng Tianfeng heard, was even more frightened, trembling and said, No, really no. Young master you, okay? You little guy, don't talk nonsense here. Only to hear his mother spit lightly without a good mood. Her jade finger gently nodded Jiang Yun's small nose. Jiang Yun immediately pouted his little mouth in aggravation. Master Dong, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. Meng Tianfeng couldn't help but speak again. Aha! Mother nodded and signaled for Meng Tianfeng to retreat. As Meng Tianfeng retreated, he stole another glance at Jiang Yun, his gaze somewhat somber and inexplicable. Little young master, party that kind of words. In the future do not say nonsense. Wow. Will kill people? Shu Ling's voice couldn't help but ring out. That man just now is a bad man. I dreamed earlier that he would harm Mother's pharmacy later. Jiang Yun blinked his eyes innocently. This? Shu Ling was stunned. Mother froze as well. Ma'am, I'm afraid this is a matter of concern. Shu Ling opened her mouth again, but was stopped by her mother waving her hand. Stay back, Mother said. Aha. Shu Ling nodded. Jiang Yun didn't say much as the purpose had basically been achieved. At this time, he took it upon himself to survey the condition of the pharmacy, while at the same time borrowing his evil god incarnation to go back to the floating lifebook school to check on LeFuzi. Soon after, the shopkeeper and Mrs. Ning had finished negotiating, and looking at Mrs. Ning's joyful face, it was obvious that there was a satisfactory result. Worthy of being the proprietor's pharmacy, it really does have a full range of medicinal herbs. Otherwise, I wouldn't know where to get all the herbs for Yuer's medicinal bath. It seems like it won't be long before my Yuer will have the cultivation of a mortal child for 2 years. Mrs. Ning came closer and spoke with her mother with a gracious smile. At the same time, she glanced lovingly at the unicorn son, Ning Xiaoyu, who was beside her. When Jiang Yun heard this, he only felt that this Mrs. Ning seemed to come to praise her mother's medicine store. But in fact, she was showing off her own son. In addition, he was more or less aware of the matter regarding Ning Xiaoyu's medicinal bath. This was because Mr. and Mrs. Ning Cohen were still young and could not read or write, nor could they understand too much knowledge, so they could not cultivate real Kung Fu for the time being, so they were prepared to use ordinary martial arts cultivation methods to build up their foundation first, so that in the future, after Ning Xiaoyu completed his literacy and initiation, he could have a higher starting point when he started his formal cultivation. In that case, I really congratulate Mrs. Ning. Mother just smiled lightly, not looking much concerned. I heard that this little one is your child. Proprietor? How old is it? It should be a year old, right? At this moment, Dame Ru looked at Jiang Yun with a self-satisfied smile and inquired. Jiang Yun instantly sensed that this guy was afraid that he was going to make a demonic move again, and it seemed that he wanted to get his breath back for the previous conflict. If that was the case, then don't blame him for not being polite. Well, a year old. Mother nodded. Jiang Yun made a cheerful sound at the right time, as if he was echoing his mother. Yo, you're a year old too? Can't you talk yet? Dame Ru looked even more pleased with herself. After a moment's deliberation, Mother was about to open her mouth to respond. Jiang Yun made another cheerful sound. Well, will be a little bit. Mother gave Jiang Yun a slightly puzzled look. Yada yada yada. Jiang Yun instantly clapped his little hands cheerfully. You know a little bit. Ha, our Kirin-chan is already able to communicate normally with adults. Ah, smart as a whip. Dame Ru laughed more and more happily, and at the same time, she also said to Ning Xiaoyu, little Yuer, why don't you say thank you to this auntie? If it weren't for this aunt, you wouldn't know how much longer you'd have to search for your medicinal bath herbs. Thanks to this aunt. Ning Xiaoyu immediately politely and nicely addressed his mother. Mrs. Ning couldn't help but reveal a satisfied and cheerful smile at her own son's performance. Well, what a good kid. Worthy of the name of unicorn. Mother smiled back and nodded. Chu Ling instead skimmed her mouth in a slightly imperceptible manner. Jiang Yun gave another cheerful cry. By the looks of it, this precious son of yours of the proprietors should not be able to walk yet either, right? Our little Yuer is already able to run and jump and start practicing martial arts. Alas, at the same age of 1 year, the difference is too great. But yes, after all, little Feather is a unicorn child. How can it be compared to any ordinary baby? But, then again, if you can't even talk or walk at a year old, that's more or less. Alas, this proprietors, don't be discouraged. Your baby will get better someday. Dame Ru again said in a rather conspiratorial and triumphant manner. The words clearly had the intention of insinuating that Jiang Yun was physically handicapped. Mother couldn't help but frown slightly. Shu Ling, on the other hand, had a somewhat ironic expression on his face, as if he couldn't bear it anymore. And at this point, Sister Linger, this big fat pig that can stand up and is very good at talking, is it the pig demon that was mentioned in the picture book? It's really awesome. Jiang Yun's childish and childlike inquisitive voice suddenly rang out. At that moment, all the people present were stunned. Put. Chu Ling reacted and couldn't help but let out a laugh. Ah, you little bastard. Who are you calling a big fat pig? Who are you calling a pig demon? See if I don't whip you to death, you little bastard. A shrill howl, only to see Dame Ru's face instantly reddened and full of grimace. She was actually directly broken through the great defense. Its big, obese hand was raised, and then it ruthlessly hailed towards Jiang Yun. Chapter 14, How dare you next time? You seek death. An angry shout. Chu Ling throws a direct leg kick. Ah! A miserable howl. There was a thud, only to see Dane Ru instantly being kicked out, falling hard to the ground, ouch ouch ouch, uttering a sigh of relief. 7 years of cultivation for a mortal child. For her part, Lady Ning looked at Chu Ling in astonishment. The two martial artists behind her were also stunned. Kiran Zi Ning Xiaoyu also froze. Whoa whoa whoa! Sister Linger is so powerful. Knocked away the pig demon in one go. Jiang Yun instantly clapped his small palms joyfully. He naturally knew that the Chu Ling girl had stayed her hand. Otherwise, how could that fat woman still have the possibility of uttering a word out of breath? In addition, he originally just wanted to hit the face to gas that Ru Daniang just did not expect it will directly break the defense hands. Can only say deserved. You guys, Mrs. Ning came back to her senses, but her face showed annoyance. Yuner, do not be rude. At this time, Mother feigned a stern face, stretching her fingers to point Jiang Yun's forehead in a slightly forceful manner, reprimanding. Oh, Jiang Yun immediately cooperated by revealing an aggrieved look. The proprietors, and Mrs. Ning, what are you doing? At this moment, the shopkeeper came to the side holding several gift boxes filled with medicinal herbs, with a look of being at a loss for words. I'm sorry to make you laugh, Mrs. Ning, my son is still young and ignorant of the world, so I can't compare him to your son, so I hope Mrs. Ning can forgive me. Today, this medicinal herb, Yun Pharmacy will give you a price cut as an apology, okay? My mother politely said to Mrs. Ning, and then commanded the shopkeeper. Why don't you quickly ask someone to pick up your guest and send him to the medical center to find a physician to take a look? We'll pay for the consultation fee. Okay. Yes, the shopkeeper hurriedly responded, then called out to that Meng Tianfeng. Tianfeng, immediately go and arrange for manpower to send your guest to seek medical attention. Yes, boss. Meng Tianfeng responded sharply. At this moment, however, Mrs. Ning was still gloomy, clearly not intending to make good. Mrs. Ning, you are also a smart person. That Ru Nyang was obviously the one who started the trouble in the first place. And I didn't say anything when she humiliated my son in such an eerie manner. I didn't say anything when she insulted my son in such a mean way. But my son just made a thoughtless remark. And then she wanted to kill my son. This maid is also protect the master heart. Really unintentional fault. Thinking differently. If someone were to treat your son, the unicorn son, in this manner, how would Mrs. Ning react? Mother spoke again. Mrs. Ning could not help but freeze, looking at Ning Xiaoyu beside her and then at Jiang Yun. Jiang Yun was already looking like an innocent baby at the moment, but he was secretly happy in his heart. It seemed that this mother of his was also very eloquent. Mrs. Ning, you and I are both mothers, so I'm sure we can understand how I feel, right? Mother gave another soft sigh. Well, children's words are reckless, so naturally it's not good for us to get involved with children. Mrs. Ning finally spoke. Thanks a lot. I don't know how to address this proprietor, and to have such a maid by his side. I guess it's not an ordinary family, right? Mrs. Ning abruptly inquired. Mu Yuyen, just an ordinary family woman. Mother responded with a smile. Mrs. Ning was silent for a moment and finally nodded, so she handed over the herbs with shopkeeper Lu and took her leave. After a while, Mother had already taken Jiang Yun and Chu Ling back towards home. Road. Yuner, next time, don't be this reckless, it's easy to offend people, understand? I only heard my mother say without a word of humor, but that fat pig spoke so harshly. Mother, you can clearly hear that she is scolding child and laughing at you too. Child can't stand it. Jiang Yun was immediately filled with righteous indignation. So it wasn't you who set them up and teased them? Do you think I don't know what you have in mind? You're so small that you dare to provoke others. What if something happens? Today, it's fortunate that Linger is protecting you. Otherwise, you'd have to suffer. Mother said with a slightly more serious voice. Isn't that because she had bad intentions in the first place? Otherwise, how could she have gotten into trouble? Mother, you have also seen her arrogant manner of saying no and then striking. Ah, she must not have bullied many people in her daily life. She must have bullied people a lot in her day-to-day life. Today, she bullied us. So what's wrong with my son telling her to learn a lesson? Is she the only one allowed to bully people? Jiang Yun retorted. He had originally thought that it was because his mother didn't want to cause trouble, but it turned out that she was worried that he would suffer. Then he had nothing to worry about. After all, he was now at least at the level of a 10-year martial grandmaster of the mortal flesh. Now in the entire Red Sun town, there weren't many people who could make him suffer. Moreover, he knew which individuals, so he didn't have to worry at all. That's not something for a little brat like you to meddle in. In the future, mind your own business, or when the time comes, don't blame your mother for calling your little ass. Got it? Mother fainted. Oh, got it. Jiang Yun nodded his head obediently, but in his heart, he said that he would dare next time. Madam, just don't worry, the young master is so smart. He definitely won't suffer any losses. Didn't you see how the young master tricked that big fat pig just now? Even the slave girl couldn't react at that time, and wondered why the young master suddenly couldn't speak anymore. But it turned out to be a trap for someone. Cluck 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 cluck. Chu Ling snickered. You just spoil him. If you spoil Yuner, I won't spare you. Mother was not in a good mood. No no no. Slave girl wouldn't dare. Chu Ling shook her head in a hurry. Seeing this, Jiang Yun couldn't help but let out a cheerful laugh. He was liking this cheap sister more and more. At the same time, his evil god avatar had already come over and followed a few people from Madame Ning, and he wanted to know what reaction this Madame Ning would have next. After all, that Dame Ru had excellent ass-kicking skills, and her relationship with Mrs. Ning was a good one. Having suffered such a big loss today, he was afraid that she wouldn't be willing to let it go. That's why he was able to respond better when he used his evil god incarnation to learn of the other party's intentions. He wasn't afraid that the other party could pose any threat to him. It was mainly just to avoid some small actions that might be more annoying and disgusting in advance. In addition, he was originally not supposed to have any interactions with that Qilinzi mother and son today, and now it is largely due to the fact that he is going to intervene in the fateful trajectory of that longtime laborer Meng Tianfeng's future betrayal of the medicine store. A few moments later, the evil god incarnate had already followed Lady Ning and Kirin Zi to the medical center and met Dame Ru, who was lying down and resting. Healer, how is Run Yang's injury? Mrs. Ning immediately inquired to the middle-aged physician in gray robes with a worried look on her face. Oh, this lady has broken a rib, but it's not too serious of an injury. It only needs to be recuperated for 10 days and half a month and then it will be fine. The consultation fee has already been paid, so you can send the person back now. Physician response. So, yes, with pleasure. Mrs. Ning answered, then called for someone to carry Dame Ru and leave the medical center. After exiting the medical center, good sister, can help me clean up that bitch, and that little bastard yet? Only Dame Ru spoke in a resigned voice. That pharmacy proprietor made amends to us. Run Yang, let's leave this matter at that. Mrs. Ning responded. This is forgotten? Good sister, how can you let this go? That little bitch hurt me so badly, and that little bastard humiliated me like that. This is clearly slapping your face, good sister, and not putting the fearless martial school in your eyes. They should have their legs broken. Dame Ru couldn't help but get excited. Chapter 15, the young master has the gift of foretelling the future. Run Yang, this time it was you who taunted someone else's child first, and that child is still only a 1-year-old child, young and ignorant. You are an adult. Why should you be catty with it? It's not good to talk about it. It's not reasonable. It's also impossible for us at the Fearless Martial School to specifically make things difficult for a little doll. Mrs. Ning said helplessly. Dame Ru's tone stuttered. Then she said with a resigned face, good sister, that little bastard is no good. He can obviously speak, but he deliberately pretended not to speak to tease me. Right, he is deliberately provoking me like this so that little bitch will have an excuse to strike at me. Mrs. Ning immediately fell into a brief moment of speechlessness, and then helplessly said, Run Yang, how is this possible? People are still just 1-year-old children. How can they have such a mind? My family's viewer is so smart. He's not even that smart. Are you not joking? Jiang Yun also deeply agreed with Mrs. Ning's statement. How could a 1-year-old child have such a heart? This Ru Daniang was simply heartless in order to take revenge. Although he had indeed deliberately set out to fix someone, he didn't believe that Dame Ru was truly able to guess. After all, normally, this is not reasonable at all. That little bastard doesn't have the heart for it. But what about his mother? What about that little bitch? Must have been taught by an adult. Dame Ru said again. Mrs. Ning shook her head in slight silence. Run Yang, let's forget about this. Regardless of whether or not an adult taught me, I'm not in a good position to make things difficult for anyone right now, because that proprietor is only afraid that she has some connections. Do you know what the strength of that maid beside her is? It's also the little slut you're talking about. What strength is this? Visual estimation should be the 7th year of cultivation of a mortal child. This strength, although our fearless martial hall is not yet in our eyes, but the person who can have a maid like this would not be an ordinary person? That lady's pharmacy is able to get these individual medicinal herbs. It's obviously not simple either. But good sister, your fearless martial hall isn't simple now. Let's not talk about the fact that nowadays the fire spirit Taoist master is befriending you guys. Don't you still have a supreme master behind you? Can you still be afraid of that mother and son? That's true, but there's no need to have to bring things to a standstill. There's more to lose than to gain, nowadays. My family Xiaoyu still needs people's medicinal herbs, medicinal baths, and since the other party is willing to take a step back to make amends with us and give us face, I naturally don't want to offend people to death. Put it this way, can you understand? Mrs. Ning responded. When Jiang Yun heard this, he couldn't help but be slightly surprised. From the looks of it, this Mrs. Ning wasn't all that much of a stupid woman who would be led around by the nose by Dame Ru all the time. Oh, so it's for little Yuer's future Well then, I know, let's let them off the hook for once then. Dame Ru nodded rather reluctantly. Jiang Yun was speechless. He was truly convinced of this pig demon's thick skin. Soon after, Jiang Yun had returned home with his mother in Chuling. Yuner, what happened when you said earlier in the medicine store that Meng Tianfeng was a bad person and would betray our medicine store in the future? Mother wondered. Children do not know. Just dream that this person will one day put poison in the medicine in our pharmacy and eat bad people. Then the shopkeeper was arrested and our pharmacy was closed. Jiang Yun responded. He knew that with the strength of Chu Ling's girl and the unknown strength of his mother, it was impossible for a mere ordinary lawn laborer to bring any substantial harm to themselves. But the problem is that mother is living in seclusion here, obviously not wanting people to know about it, and thought that she did not want there to be a time when she would be flaunted. So if something goes wrong with the pharmacy, it will still bring more or less trouble. At this point, mother couldn't help but be a little incredulous, but was also clearly thinking about the possibility of this. Madam, I'm only afraid that what the young master said is true. Didn't the young master say it was accurate when the mountain spirits attacked twice before? You have to know that the young master hasn't been outside before. Chu Ling opened his mouth. The main thing is that this is just too bizarre. How could Cloud dream about these things? Mother looked at Jiang Yun curiously. I don't know, kid, I just naturally dream about it. Jiang Yun had a confused look on his face. Madam, I think the young master has the gift of foreseeing the future. After all, it's the child of a madam. Isn't it normal to have this kind of superiority? Chu Ling laughed. You're the only girl who can say nice things. Mother was a little out of sorts. That's not true. I'm just telling the truth. By the way, ma'am, since the young master has this kind of skill, should we consider letting him go to the Taoist master floating dust to practice diffractive arts in the future? Wouldn't that be a good fit? I'm sure the young master will be able to make a name for himself as a celestial master in the future. Worshipping the floating dust Taoist master? Mother couldn't help but show a hesitant look. No, mother, I don't want to worship the floating dust Taoist master. Jiang Yun immediately refused. He wasn't worried about being counted by Taoist floating dust for the evil god incarnation talent in his body now. After all, his diffractive art had already surpassed Taoist floating dust. Taoist master floating dust could not trigonize his existence now. If he went to worship the master, he might even scare people. And even if he really wants to find someone to worship, then he is also looking for Lu Fu Zi to worship. This is a stealthy master. Why? How come it feels like you're rejecting the floating dust Taoist master? Could it be that this Taoist master floating dust is also a bad person? At that moment, mother was amused. No, my child is thinking that this floating dust Taoist master is not a good student of the art and will mislead people. Jiang Yun shook his head. Oh, Taoist floating dust is not a good learner? What makes Yuner think so? Mother was even more curious. Because his name is floating dust. This floating dust, what can he do? Jiang Yun directly bullshitted his way up. After all, he could only say so much. He couldn't say that his current diffractive art had surpassed Taoist floating dust. Could he? What kind of reasoning is that? That's just a self-effacing title for others. How can it be a standard for judgment? If someone calls himself the world's first heavenly master, then is he really the world's first heavenly master? Mother was not amused at once. Of course, if you dare to call yourself the best in the world, you must have quite a lot of self-confidence and ability, or else you dare to say so casually. Jiang Yun immediately and fervently continued his nonsense. My mother sniffed, sweating outright, come a bit dumbfounded, because Jiang Yun's words actually still had some truth to them. After all, an unusual person wouldn't dare to claim to be the best in the world. Cluck 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 cluck. It seems that the young master really has a discerning eye. Anyone who can stay in a small place like Qian Town and work as a fortune teller isn't very good at what they do. Those who are capable are heading to the big city. At this moment, Chu Ling couldn't help but chime in with a delicate smile. You girl will fool around with him as much as you can. It was also you who brought up the idea of asking him to worship the master of the floating dust Taoist. The one who taunts others about the skill of the flying dust Taoist master is also you. Mother was not in a good mood. Yeah, the slave girl doesn't mean anything else. She just wants young master to learn the skills of that floating dust Taoist master first, and then find a more powerful one to learn the art later. Chu Ling couldn't help but look embarrassed. Alright, let's talk about this later. Yuner is only a year old now, and she doesn't even recognize words. If you go to learn the arts, people won't be able to teach you. Also, mother, what about that bad man at the drugstore? Jiang Yun suddenly realized that the topic had been taken too far, and none of the main things had been resolved yet. Chapter 16, Mother thinks you're a loner. Mother will take care of this. You don't have to worry. Mother responded. Aha! Jang Yun was instantly relieved. With her mother's skill, there would definitely be a good outcome. Subsequently, he also left the evil god incarnation to find that Meng Tianfeng to do another fortune-telling, and found that the trajectory of this guy's destiny has been changed, and it will be found by the shopkeeper in the future when he poisoned, and then captured and sent to the government, and went to jail. It seemed that this was the result of Niang's handling of the situation. He originally thought that his mother would directly stop this thing from happening, but he did not expect to wordlessly clean up the people as well. At this point, come to the courtyard. Young master, this is for you. While Chu Ling handed Jiang Yun the picture album, she also brought a somewhat familiar token. Fearless Iron Order? Jiang Yun froze. If he remembered correctly, this should be the token that Ning Kuan, the director of the Fearless Martial Hall, had previously given to Chu Ling. What was this girl giving him? Young master, this is something the slave girl picked up by chance. It's said to be the Fearless Martial School's Iron Order, which allows the Fearless Martial School to help out. The next time you encounter the Fearless Martial Halls, come looking for trouble. Young master, you can just fling this Iron Order directly at their faces, and they will not dare to say a word. Chu Ling said with a smile. Ha, is this thing that powerful? Jiang Yun looked surprised. It's okay, but remember, young master, if someone asks you where you got this Iron Order, you can't say that you found it, much less that it was given to you by a slave girl. You must say that it was given to you by a certain mysterious senior. Understand? Oh, got it. Jiang Yun nodded, but his heart is subtle. This girl is really worried about him. Gradually, another month passed. Training, 11 years of mortal birth, diffractive arts, insight, talent, evil god incarnate, chance, luck, 1, 263. Jiang Yun's cultivation had already reached 11 years of mortal fetus, and although he could feel that his own strength was improving, it wasn't obvious, so he thought it was the reason for the bottleneck state. At this moment, he was being brought by his mother and Chu Ling to play outside of his own courtyard, and this was the first time he was officially brought outside to play. Young master, look, there are children playing over there. Why don't you go over and play with them? Chu Ling reached out and pointed to the side of the 7 children who were frolicking and playing in the mud. These children, aged 1 to 3 years old, were living in neighborhood homes. Don't. They're too childish. Jiang Yun shook his head in some disgust. Naturally, he couldn't possibly be interested in playing in the mud with small children. Moreover, these neighbors nearby were not something he had a good feeling about. Because of his mother's condition, their family hadn't been criticized much in this neighborhood. He had heard whatever unpleasant words through the evil god incarnation, so how could he still have good feelings? However, most of these people only say unpleasant things in private. Coupled with the family also basically not much contact with these neighbors, so the surface is not much. He also did not bother to pay more attention to it. In fact, he is also clear on the mother's condition. Where to go? It is inevitable to be subjected to criticism. Ha? Too childish? Chu Ling froze. You little bitty one. You're not even as old as them and you're calling them childish? Mother couldn't help but laugh. Anyway, child is not interested in playing with them. It's good to have Sister Linger to play with child. Jiang Yun responded with some embarrassment. Okay, whatever. Mother said helplessly. The slave girl also likes the little young master the most. Chu Ling then said with a happy face. Ha? Neighborhood. Is this taking the kids out for air? A surprised and enthusiastic voice rang out. But it was the next yard that came out with a young woman with a plump body and quite a bit of good looks. Jiang Yun knows. This is the next door martial artist Kong Chio's mother-in-law. Yu Meinyang. That Kong Chio early years in the Fearless Martial Arts School has learned the art, although did not get what the true transmission, but also has a mortal 6 years of practitioner cultivation. In this street neighborhood, is basically no one dares to mess with the character. At this time, when her mother heard her words, she only nodded her head to that Yu Meinyang with a light smile. Yeah, is this little baby the neighbor's child? The end is so beautiful and clever. Yu Meinyang came closer and complimented Jiang Yun with a smile on her face. Your ladyship is so overrated. Mother couldn't help but laugh, obviously still very joyful to hear someone praising her own child. Meet this aunt. Jiang Yun also said politely. In his heart, he was quite disgusted with the woman in front of him who was not what she appeared to be. This woman had called him a wild seed behind his back. She had also slandered his mother in every way, from her appearance to her family's wealth. And this woman's private life is also very indiscreet. Yikes, the little baby is so polite. Yu Meinyang was slightly surprised. Then she reached over with a joyful smile on her face to touch Jiang Yun's face. Jiang Yun's heart tightened, and subconsciously, he took a step back to avoid the woman's hand. He didn't want to let this woman's dirty hands touch him. Instead, Yu Meinyang couldn't help but facepalm. I'm sorry, ma'am, my child recognizes birth. Mother spoke at once. Hey, So, it's okay, it's okay. Yu Yang resumed her friendly smile. Mother. At that moment a childish call rang out, but he saw a small child of about 2.5 years old, his body covered with mud and a little strong, come to the side of Yu Yang, obviously coming from the 7 children who were playing with mud over there. And this little boy is Yu Yang's son Kong Shang, because of its father. In this neighborhood has been some hidden child king. This is my child Kong Shang. Shanger, say hello to this aunt, who is from the house next door. Yu Yang smiled. Meet auntie. Kong Shang looked at his mother and said. At this moment, his gaze was vaguely odd, and then he looked over to Jiang Yun. Good boy. At this point, mother answered with a smile. Neighbors, why don't you let my Shanger take your little baby over there to play? Little kids just need more partners to play with. It's never good to be alone and withdrawn. Yu Yang laughed. When her mother heard this, she couldn't help but look at Jiang Yun with some hesitation. No, this aunt, I'm used to playing alone. Jiang Yun immediately shook his head. At the same time, he was depressed in his heart, so he said that he was just annoyed with this kind of superficial and inconsistent stuff, clearly not being able to see that he was good, but still had to frame his good guy face in front of people, giving him nothing to do. Yu Yang couldn't help but show an odd expression on her face. Apparently, there was also some snickering about Jiang Yun's withdrawn nature like this. After all, in most people's opinion, it really wasn't a good thing for a child to be too withdrawn. Yuner, just go over there and have some fun. It's good to get to know some little friends. Maybe in a while you'll realize that you're having more fun than if you were on your own. At this moment, mother said to Jiang Yun with some apprehension. Jiang Yun was speechless. This mother of his was truly overly worried. Cloud? Well, Jiang Yun couldn't help but respond helplessly. Never mind. He was still just a child in his mother's eyes after all. It was better to act normal. Giggle. What a good baby. Shanger, you take this little brother over to play. Don't bully him. Yu Yang immediately laughed delicately. Got it, mother. Kong Shang answered, and his small hand with mud came over to pull on Jiang Yun's arm. Little brother, come with me. Jiang Yun had to follow with some depression and disgust. He didn't like getting dirty, but there was nothing he could do about it now. Linger, you watch Yuner from the side. I'll have a chat with this lady here. Mother instructed Chu Ling again. Yes, ma'am. Chu Ling nodded. Jiang Yun followed Kong Shang to a group of children who also looked at him curiously. Boss, who is this little guy? A little red-clothed child of about 2 years old inquired with Kong Shang. Nah, it's not that one. My mom told me to bring him over to play. Kong Shang nudged over to Jiang Yun's yard. Ha, he's that family's little bastard? The little boy in red burst out. At the same time, several of the children present cast strange gazes with some contempt at Jiang Yun. Chapter 17, he's just a kid. Jiang Yun skimmed his mouth and was about to turn around and leave. He really wasn't interested in messing around with these brats, and since the other party had said something like this, he would turn around and say goodbye to his mother, so he didn't need to be here for the awkward scene. After all, playing with mud, he really wasn't good at it. Where are you going, little brother? Kong Shang, however, hastily pulled on Jiang Yun's arm. Jiang Yun froze and said with an odd expression on his face, You've all cursed, can't I leave? At the same time, he also slightly shook his head to the side of Chu Ling, who saw that the situation was not right and was preparing to come over. Are you going to sue? Kong Shang, however, instantly showed a ferocious expression with a warning and threatening look on his face. No, Jiang Yun laughed. Was he about to suffer from bullying? If you go and tell on me, I'll make sure you get in trouble every day. My dad is a martial arts expert. No one can protect you. Kong Shang immediately whispered viciously. When Jiang Yun heard this, he couldn't help but look at Kong Shang with an odd smile on his face. Why are you still giggling? Play with us here for a while first, or I'll clean you up right now. Kong Shang's eyes glared, and his grip on Jiang Yun's arm was made a little stronger, the threatening intent not too obvious. Boss, what's the point of nagging at this little bastard? If he dares to disobey, just give him 2 punches. Who doesn't know that his family only has a misbehaving little bitch mother? What can they do to us? He. At this moment, we only saw that red-clothed boy with a bad smile on his face. Little trash. Eat your grandpa's kick first. Jiang Yun couldn't help but feel anger in his heart and directly kicked out with a side kick. It was fine to scold him, a small child. He would have been too lazy to care more, but daring to scold his mother, then he didn't want to be polite. Bang! Ah! A cry of pain. The little boy in red was instantly kicked by Jiang Yun's dark energy and fell to the ground, then wailed in pain. With this kick, Jiang Yun had naturally withdrawn his force, or else with his current cultivation of 11 years of mortal fetus martial grandmaster, this little brat would be able to fly far away on the spot and directly break his breath. Of course, this staying his hand was not because he was kind-hearted. Bad seeds like this, directly kicked to death. He would not even have any guilt in his heart. His kindness would only be reserved for those who deserved it. Bad seeds were not worthy. The reason why he stayed his hand was mainly because he didn't want to make things too big and cause trouble for his mother. Little thing, how dare you hit someone? At this moment, Kong Sheng could no longer help but be furious and exerted force in his hands with the intention of pressing down Zhang Yun. It looks like you can't see who's the boss. Oh. With a backhanded grab, Zhang Yun easily grabbed Kong Sheng's wrist and pressed his thumb against the back of his hand, instantly locking his wrist joints in place. Ow! Mother! Mother! Kong Sheng instantly fell straight to his knees in pain and cried out, while rickering and adjusting his angle to ease the pain coming from the pressure on his wrist joints. The rest of the children around had already been scared white at this point, frozen and not knowing what to do. Shang-er, what are you doing? When Yu Mei Yang heard the commotion here, she hurriedly came over. Seeing this, Zhang Yun immediately gave a look to the Chu Ling girl on the side who was also looking a bit dazed. Chu Ling instantly came back to her senses, and with a single stride, she stopped Yu Mei Yang. This lady, children's playfulness. Adults should not get involved. You get out of the way. Yu Mei Yang was furious, so she wanted to push Chu Ling away. Chu Ling's face showed disdain, and with a casual grab and twist, he backhanded Yu Mei Yang to the back waist and controlled her. Ah, you little bitch, let go of me. Get off me. Yu Mei Yang was suddenly frantic. Mother! Mother! Kong Sheng cried even more. Poof! Zhang Yun let out a disdainful sound, then his eyes looked towards the group of young children. All of you little trash, listen carefully to me. Your grandfather, in front of me, each and every one of you are little trash. In the future, when you see your grandfather, be honest with me, or else you will be beaten up once. Your parents can't protect you either. Listen carefully. When the group of children heard this, they were even more pale and were too frightened to say anything. Neighbors, this is how your family teaches your children. Is this how your family is run? Yu Mei Yang's voice, which was furious to the extreme, resounded once again. Yu-ner, what are you doing here? Why are you bullying? At this time, Mother finally came back to her senses, and her face became a bit not so good. Mother, they scolded me for being a little wild seed, and wouldn't let me leave or they would beat me. They also scolded you, Mother, and my child was so angry that he did it. Zhang Yun responded with some aggravation. When her mother heard this, her face instantly changed, and her somewhat icy eyes swept a glance at the group of children. Finally looking at Nyan Yu Mei, Chu Ling was even more pale at this moment, and his body's aura became somewhat frightening. Yu Mei Yang couldn't help but look flustered. But then she said in annoyance, they're all just little kids. What can they understand? We, as adults, still have to bother with children. Then my little young master, he's still a little kid too. What's the point of getting excited when you're yakking around here again? Chu Ling responded. Can't you see he's still bullying my family's Shenger? Yu Mei Yang was again exasperated. Little young master, he's still just a child. What's wrong with bullying your family's Shenger? Chu Ling responded again. Is this how you condone your own children's bullying? Yeah, after all, young master, he's still just a kid. Chu Ling responded again in a salty manner. Zhang Yun almost couldn't help but laugh out loud when he heard this. Get off of me, you little bitch. Otherwise, when my man comes out later, there'll be no good news for you. Old Autumn, come out. Someone is bullying us, mother and son. Yu Mei Yang was already furious and howled in anger. Father, save us. Someone is bullying me and my mom. Kong Sheng also wailed miserably. Poof. Chu Ling let out a disdainful cold snort, and then it was to Zhang Yun. Young master, you're still just a child. You can do whatever you want. There's a slave girl here to cover you. Don't worry. Zhang Yun sniffed and glanced at his mother, who already had an acquiescent look on her face. Okay. He casually raised his hand and slapped it on Kong Sheng's cheek with a snap. You little trash. Little bastard. Even if you call your father out, he won't be able to protect you. Kong Sheng's cheeks suddenly swollen high, and again while woeful crying and howling. Father, help me. You little bastard. Let go of my son. You're the son of a bitch. When my man comes out, I'll beat you bitches to death. Yu Mei Yang's howl of rage was heard again. Seek death. Chu Ling was instantly furious, casually flipping Yu Mei Yang over and slapping her across the face, directly spinning her around and dropping her to the ground. If you dare to talk cheaply again, believe it or not, Auntie will stomp on your neck and break it. Chu Ling let out another cold cry and stomped on Yu Mei Yang's neck, making it unable to get up in the slightest. At this moment, Yu Mei Yang seemed to have been frightened by Chu Ling's killing intent, so frightened that she no longer dared to say a word. Bang! There was a sudden pop, only to see the courtyard gate of Yu Mei Yang's house open, and a big, burly, thick-browed man stepped out quickly. It was none other than Yu Mei Yang's man, Kong Chio. When Kong Chio saw the tragic situation outside where his own mother-in-law and son were being cleaned up, he instantly roared in anger with his eyes wide open. You guys are looking for death. With a large step, he attacked Chu Ling angrily. Chapter 18, Silly Old Autumn helped you raise your son. Humph. Jumper. Chu Ling let out a disdainful sound, and at the moment Kong Chio approached, her jade hand casually blocked out, easily catching Kong Chio's huge fist. What? Kong Chio couldn't help but be startled, but not before he reacted more. Chu Ling's hands acted quickly, pulling and twisting, directly controlling Kong Chio's right hand to press it down to kneel on the ground, and a foot steadily stepped on Kong Chio's back, letting it not get up in the slightest, just by virtue of your little yakuza. You also dare to be in front of the grandma horizontal? You're a martial arts expert in the 8th year of your mortal life. Kong Chio was instantly appalled. Old Autumn. Yu Mei Yang was shocked and climbed up to help. Chu Ling coldly looked at her with a single glance, directly frightening Yu Mei Yang into a shiver, not daring to take a step forward. Manhwa, brother Chio, what's wrong with you guys? At that moment a voice of alarm rang out. Only a scholarly-looking white handsome man came from one side. Jiang Yun knew that this man was Kong Chio's good brother and Yu Mei Yang's old flame, Hua Deli. The neighbors around the street were also lured out one after another by the commotion outside. Those little children who were frightened by Jiang Yun were also pulled away by their respective parents in panic. Ah, my son, what happened to you? Where is it hurt? The red-clothed boy who had been kicked to the ground by Jiang Yun was also helped up by a slightly chubby woman who was nervous and frightened. Mother, is he the one who hit me? He just kicked me. The little child in red pointed at Jiang Yun in fear and cried, You're the one who injured my son. The woman was instantly furious, her eyes glaring at Jiang Yun. Jiang Yun frowned as he looked around at the large swath of neighbors. This matter seemed to have gotten a little too big. My son hit me. Why? A cold and familiar voice suddenly sounded behind himself. Jiang Yun was startled and looked back slightly, only to see that his mother had actually arrived behind him at some point. At this moment, his mother's body was radiating an extremely majestic and terrifying aura of superiority. This mother of his was really quite something. Your son hit someone, and you say what's wrong? The woman was clearly intimidated by her mother's aura, and her original questioning voice couldn't help but tremble a little. Blame it on your son's foul mouth, the one who made the first move to curse. Mother coldly said. How can you talk like that? Even if it's no good, my son is still just a child, the woman said angrily. Jiang Yun was speechless. One by one this excuse. What a universal reason. My son is still just a child too. He's the one who hit your son. And what are you counting here? Mother returned. Don't you care about your own children? The woman was furious. He's just a kid. Mother responded flatly. Put. Jiang Yun finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. He was not expecting his mother to have learned this hand. It's so unreasonable. Son, let's go. Don't play with such people. The woman angrily left with the little boy in red. This family of yours is so lawless as to hurt people on the street. You are really too deceitful. I'm going to sue you. At this moment, Hua Deli's angry voice rang out. Right, let's sue the officials. This family is bullying the weak with their power. There's no one good. Yu Mei Yang also came to Hua Deli's side with a resigned look on her face. Those neighbors around them were in an uproar when they heard this, and they also pointed their fingers, especially the parents of the children who were scared by Jiang Yun just now. The mother of that red-clothed child was even more righteously indignant as she accused Jiang Yun's mother and son. At this moment, Mother also couldn't help but slightly knit her willow brows, and some of her face was hard to see. Little bastard. Stay here honestly. Jiang Yun casually let go of Kong Shang and then walked towards the Chuling girl's side. Cloud? Mother was puzzled, and instantly followed. Young master, don't worry. With the slave girl here, no one can make you suffer. Chuling's face showed biting anger, still escorting Kong Chio and stepping on his back. Sister Linger, you let this uncle go first. Jiang Yun, however, laughed. Ha! Chuling froze, as if she somewhat suspected that she had heard wrong. The people present also froze. Sister Linger, you let this uncle go first. It's fine, I have some things to say to this uncle. Jiang Yun laughed again. Oh, Chuling was still puzzled, but he glanced at his mother and seemed to have gotten the go-ahead, so he casually released Kong Chio. When Kong Chio regained his freedom, he hurriedly retreated to the side of Yu Mainyang and Hua Dili with vigilance. Now you know you're scared? But it doesn't matter anymore. We will definitely report to the police. Yu Mainyang immediately revealed a smug and arrogant face. Not bad. I've at least taken the exam. None of you can escape from this today. Hua Dili also sneered. More for elder brother Hua. Kong Chio couldn't help but show a hint of a raised eyebrow when he heard this. This uncle. What were you so excited about just now? This aunt. with that little villain. Is not your mother-in-law and child? Jiang Yun looked at Kong Chiu with a childish face and reached out to point at Yang and that Kong Shang. At those words, everyone present was stunned. Brat, what are you babbling about here? Kong Chiu was instantly furious. What are you talking nonsense here? You little bastard. For her part, Yang angrily rebuked with a somewhat unfavorable face. I didn't realize that you, a small child at a small age, had grown such a bad mouth. Hua Dili also chided, but there was some hidden weakness under his eyes. Humph. I'm not making this up. Jiang Yun crossed his arms and looked at Yang with an old-fashioned look and said, I've been next door many times, but I've seen you and this uncle hugging and playing together, playing in the house and in the yard. I also heard you guys say something about silly old Autumn helping you guys raise your son or something. Auntie, you also said that silly old Autumn is boring as hell. Not at all as good as Brother Knight. What are you talking about here? You little bastard. Old Autumn. Don't listen to his nonsense. This little bastard just doesn't have good intentions. He's trying to drive us apart. He's so young, but his heart is so bad. Yang had interrupted Jiang Yun with a scream. Right, Brother Chiu. I didn't expect this kid to have such a vicious mind for such a small person. Don't be fooled. I've been with you for decades, played with you since we were kids. What kind of character do you not know? Hua Dili also opened his mouth in a righteous manner, just like a gentleman. At this moment, Kong Chiu's face is very bad. A face of uncertainty looked not far away. Seems to look not too much like their own son Kong Shang. For a while, he could not tell what he was thinking, and the neighbors who were watching around them were looking at each other, some even whispering. Mother and the Chuling girl were a bit dumbfounded. Jiang Yun, however, spoke again. This uncle, I really didn't lie to you. I also know that this aunt has hidden a lot of good-looking strange clothes at the bottom of the closet in your house, specifically wearing to play with this uncle. Also said that she never wore it for you to see, saying that you don't deserve it. Chapter 19, Mother is angry. Little bastard. Shut up. What are you babbling about here? Yang interrupted Jiang Yun with another scream. Little thing, if you continue to spread rumors here, I'll immediately go to the government to sue you. Doesn't anyone care about you adults? Hua Dili was even more shocked and furious. I'm not making up rumors. I saw a red mark on this auntie's but when you guys were cuddling and playing together in the yard. Just tell me if it's there or not. And when you guys cuddle and play together, your favorite action is when auntie is on. Woo! Before Jiang Yun could finish his sentence, he realized that his mouth was covered. Okay, you don't talk nonsense here. Let's go back. His mother picked up Jiang Yun and gave him a slightly hard spank on the buttocks before taking him back towards home. Chu Ling glanced at the people present, and without saying anything more, he also shrugged his shoulders and followed back to the courtyard. It then left a cacophony of noise outside. Old Autumn, that little bastard is talking nonsense. Don't believe him. I really have nothing to do with Night. Autumn, where are you going? Wait a minute. My son is still out there. Brother Autumn, Main Yang and I are really innocent. Dad. When Jiang Yun was brought back to the courtyard. Cloudy, when did you get down on the wall and peek at all that mess next door? When Mother put down Jiang Yun, she crossed her arms and said with a stern face. At the same time, she also glanced at the returning Chu Ling. Mistress, the slave girl doesn't know either. When I was taking care of the young master, I never noticed any movement next door, let alone seeing the young master lying on the wall or anything. Chu Ling responded in a hurry. Mother, in fact, child did not peep. The party said those are child dreamed before. Jiang Yun said with an innocent face. That was naturally what he had seen through the evil god incarnation when he was bored. He just didn't think that these gossips would come in handy one day. Moreover, what he had seen wasn't as exaggerated as Fang said. At least he hadn't seen Yang and Hua Dili directly fighting in the courtyard. Also, whose child that Kongsheng really is. In fact, Yang and Hua Dali don't know, because Yang often finished her fights with Hua Dali, and then went on to fight with Kong Chiu at night. Therefore, the words he said just now were slightly embellished and added a little artistic effect. Dreamed it? When her mother heard this, she froze and her face eased slightly. Indeed it is a dream. The slave girl said. The little young master is either under the eyes of the lady, or under the eyes of the slave girl. If you really lie down on the wall and peep, how can you not be discovered? Chu Ling immediately nodded deeply. Jiang Yun, on the other hand, snickered in his heart. This excuse was really good, but in the end, even if Mother and Chu Ling couldn't believe it, they really couldn't find any other possibility for him to know these things. This was why this excuse, which was originally quite outrageous, sounded less outrageous and wasn't difficult to accept. Old Autumn, what are you trying to do here? You're not really going to believe that little bastard next door. He's really talking nonsense. Brother Knight and I haven't done anything nasty in the yard at all. That little bastard has a vicious mind. The sharp, Panicked cries of Yu Main Yang suddenly came from the next yard. Ma'am, can the slave girl go over and rip that bitch's mouth off? Chu Ling immediately spoke in a cold voice. No, someone will already clean her up. No need to get your hands dirty. Mother shook her head. At that moment there was another cacophony of banging from next door, as if something had been broken or smashed. And Zhang Yun had already had the evil god incarnate quickly rush back to watch the fun at this point. Bitch, then you tell me about it. What are these unashamed things again? How come I've never seen you wear them for me? An angry, uncontrollable growl rang out, only to see silly old Autumn dragging Yu Main Yang out of the house and throwing a bundle of women's clothing in a very hot style into the courtyard. At this moment, that Hua Dali was standing in the courtyard with an anxious and panicked face. There was also that little boy, Kong Shang, who stood beside Hua Dali with a bewildered look on his face, not knowing what to do. Ah, old Autumn, this is I just bought a while ago, ready to wear for you to see. Who knows, this day will encounter this happenings. Yu Mainyang stammered out an explanation, but before she could finish, snap, a loud slap had landed hard on Yu Mainyang's fair face, and then quickly left a red and swollen palm print. Bitch, you still treat me like a fool, don't you? I've poured my heart out to you for so many years, and I've complied with you on everything. Is this how you treat me? Kong Chiu hissed with red eyes. Brother Autumn, what are you doing? Mainyang and I are really innocent. How can you listen to the nonsense of that little scumbag next door? Could it be that our brotherly love for so many years is not worth the nonsense of a little scumbag? Hua Dili rushed forward and blocked in front of Yu Mainyang, protecting the road. TSK, actually calling out affectionately with one mouthful of Mainyang? Zhang Yun only feel dumbfounded. He is also completely convinced the silly old Autumn, this good brother, is really already this guy is a complete big smart to play and Kong Chiu is already full of anger. Directly is a kick out, roll. Surname Hua, you give me the old man out. I don't have a brother like you. Bang! Ah! Hua Dili screamed miserably as his entire body was kicked out, then landed on the ground curled up in pain. Yu Mainyang was even more shocked and shivered, her face too pale to speak. Dad! At this moment, that Kong Sheng seemed to be frightened and cried out wanting Kong Chiu to hug him. You little bastard! Don't call me father! Kong Chiu was furious and kicked Kong Sheng away. Father! Father! I'm not a little bastard. Don't want me. Mother! Kong Sheng immediately sat on the ground and cried terribly. Obviously Kong Chiu still didn't bother to hurt this child. Otherwise, with Kong Chiu's 6 years of mortal fetus cultivation, how could Kong Sheng, a child of less than 3 years old, still have the chance to sit here and cry? Old Autumn, Shenger is really your son. You can't do this to him. Yu Mainyang was shocked and rushed forward to protect Kong Sheng. When Zhang Yun saw this, he didn't have the heart to continue watching. It couldn't be helped. He had been kind-hearted since he was a child and couldn't see such a scene of a wife being separated. At this moment, in Zhang Yun's own courtyard, Zhang Yun had already been brought back inside the house by his mother, while the Chu Ling girl was left outside. Inside the room, the atmosphere was sullen as mother looked at Zhang Yun with tightly pursed lips. Mother? What's the matter? Did I make trouble for you? I promise I won't dare to do it again. So don't be angry, okay? Zhang Yun couldn't help but open his mouth. In his heart, he was worried. Could it be that he had behaved too unusually, causing his mother to become suspicious? That being said, today's matter, how could a 1-year-old child be able to do this? Together with his usual performance, ultimately too bizarre. Yu-ner, is mother who has wronged you? Mother, however, suddenly reddened her eyes and directly hugged Zhang Yun in her arms. Sobbing, Zhang Yun couldn't help but freeze. Mother? How? What happened? Chapter 20, The Young Master is Born with God's Power. It's my mother's fault for causing you to be ridiculed and for calling people down. In the end, I still have to let you solve the problem alone. I'm sorry, Yu-ner. Mother still hugged Zhang Yun tightly, choking on a million sour sobs. It doesn't. Mother, the child doesn't mind. Zhang Yun could not help but feel some heat in his eyes. This mother is really too good for him, and he really didn't care about all the mocking and looking down. After all, he wasn't really a kid in the first place. Sorry, mother, however, continued to mumble and repeat. No, mother, don't cry. I'm not aggrieved. I have the best mother in the world. What else is there to be aggrieved about? Zhang Yun hurriedly persuaded him. However, he did not persuade. Okay, this persuasion. Mother is crying even more. Just hold him chanting, crying. Zhang Yun had no choice but to simply let his mother cry enough and gently patted her with his small hand in relief. After a long time, mother's weeping had tapered off. Mother, is it better? Zhang Yun spoke softly. Well, I'm sorry, it's mother who lost her temper and made you laugh at Yuner. Mother let go of Zhang Yun, a hint of embarrassment on her face. No such thing. Jiang Yun was somewhat helpless. Yun Air, do you have anything you want to ask mother? Mother hesitated. This doesn't seem to be. Jiang Yun shook his head. Ask. He still had some questions he wanted to ask, such as the background of his life and all that, but he didn't particularly want to ask is all. Because of these, he didn't really care much about them. And anyway, he was living a cozy life now, so there was no need to add to his worries. For my mother's precious Yuner, for my mother knows that you understand things, but, if there's anything you want to ask, there are some that I am still able to inform you of now. Mother showed her heartache again. Mother, there really isn't. Child is doing fine now. There's no need to ask for trouble. Jiang Yun was helpless. Some of it could be told to him? That meant there were still some that couldn't be told. So it would be better not to tell him anything at all, and wait for the time when he could be told. No need to know a little bit and not know a little bit. Telling him to scratch his head every day to ruminate and give himself a mental internal conflict. Cloud. Mother's nose was red, but she looked like she was about to cry again. Don't. Mother, you really don't cry. I'm really fine now. Aren't you asking me to feel bad with you? Jiang Yun hurriedly spoke. Mother sniffed, froze, and then was unable to help but break into a smile, and another gentle sigh. Okay, let for mother alone to be quiet for a while. You first go out to find Linger to play. Yes, mother. Jiang Yun sighed in relief, and he saluted and left. Come outside. Young master. Chu Ling immediately called out. Aha. Jiang Yun nodded. Madam is now? Chu Ling revealed a hint of worry, thinking that Fong had also heard the commotion inside the house. Nothing's wrong. Mother wants to be quiet for a while. Jiang Yun laughed. So, that's good. Chu Ling sighed in relief, then smiled and took Jiang Yun's small hand. Young master, come over here for a moment. Jiang Yun was stunned, but he followed Chu Ling to the large tree within the courtyard. Young master, lift this stone and see. Chu Ling pointed to a small rock under the tree. Jiang Yun was even more puzzled, but he still went forward and picked up the small stone. What about this? Chu Ling pointed to another, somewhat larger rock next to him. Jiang Yun moved up as usual. What about this? Chu Ling pointed to another stone that was a bit bigger, and it looked like it could be estimated to be 5 or 6 pounds. Jiang Yun immediately looked at Chu Ling with an odd look in his heart. This girl couldn't be trying to test his strength, right? Because of what happened earlier when he cleaned up those brats outside? He thought, and lifted the rock as well as he had done. Then this one. Try this one too. Chu Ling was already pointing with some delight at a pebble the size of a child's head, which weighed about 10 pounds. Jiang Yun mouth corner a draw. Let a 1-year-old baby child to move this thing. This girl really did not take him as a normal person. Although this thought, but he still satisfied this girl's wish. Slightly strenuous appearance of the stone to move up. Who let this girl so spoil him? So blind faith in him? If he didn't give some response, he would more or less feel a bit overwhelmed. Wow, not bad for a young master. Then this one. Chu Ling, however, excitedly and joyfully pointed to another pebble twice as large, weighing about 20 pounds. Jiang Yun immediately twitched the corners of his mouth again. This girl is really crazy. This is really something a human being can do? He then took a deep breath and pretended to be very strenuous as he slowly moved the roughly 20-pound pebble up to his knees before setting it down with a look of disengagement. This 20 pounds of pebbles, moving, he naturally was able to move it easily. The problem is that he is still only a just 1-year-old baby. Since the weight of the individual are not able to get to 20 pounds, even 3 and 4-year-olds could only move about 10 pounds. So it's better for him not to get too outrageous. Good. You really are born with divine power. Little ancestor. Truly worthy of being the lady's child. Chu Ling clapped her hands in surprise, and then she was lifting Jiang Yun high in her arms. Jiang Yun could only helplessly let this girl go crazy. After a while, mother seemed to have calmed down, opened the door and came out of the house. Ma'am. Chu Ling hurriedly stepped forward and saluted. Mother. Jiang Yun also went up and called out, and at this moment, he realized that the girl Chu Ling was secretly observing her mother's face with some concern. It seems that its party is not completely at ease, just did not reveal too much with him, and will not ask too much with him. Well, what were you guys playing just now? Like you were having a good time? Mother smiled a gentle smile. Picture. Jiang Yun laughed. This was also considered a game that he was more than happy to play with Chu Ling's girl, so he could practice his skills a little. Oh, pot throwing? Ha? Who won more then? Mother laughed again. Of course it's the young master. Chu Ling immediately said. Aha! Jiang Yun also cooperated and nodded happily. He naturally knew that Chu Ling girl was letting him, but playing games with Chu Ling, he himself was also hiding his clumsiness. Therefore, the two played with the word fake. Yuner is awesome. Mama complimented. By the way, ma'am, the slave girl has something she wants to talk to you about. Chu Ling suddenly spoke. What is it? Mother was puzzled. It's just that the young master was born with divine power. The slave girl just gave the young master a test. His body is now equivalent to a normal 4 or 5-year-old child. Before outside, when the young master cleaned up that little scum next door, the slave girl could see the young master's strength. When I came back to try, I was not surprised, Chu Ling said with excitement and delight. Well, the party was outside, and I saw it. Mama smiled and nodded, obviously very pleased as well. That, lady, why don't we let the little young master start cultivating now? Chu Ling's hesitant voice then sounded again. When Jiang Yun heard this, he couldn't help but be dismayed. This girl wanted him to start cultivating now? What kind of cultivation? So this was the reason why girl Chu Ling wanted to test his strength just now. Chapter 30, Who is the mysterious old man? With the appearance of the wind and clouds, Jiang Yun quickly had the evil god incarnate run to the Yu clan again to check out the situation. At this moment, only the Yu family's council hall was visible. Yu Mingpeng, the grandfather's generation, summoned a group of family core members anxiously deliberating. That Yu Baihuan was also present. You guys talk. What the hell is going on here? How did the wind and cloud ranking come out? And our Yu clan is ranked second? It's even ahead of the 3 great Taoist wonders. What have you all been doing out there? Yu Mingpeng said angrily. No, father. Acting within the family has always been very low-key. The biggest thing that has happened recently is that little nephew Yu Baihuan accidentally committed a crime and suffered some jail time. Yu Filong, the contemporary head of the Yu clan, hurriedly responded cautiously. Yu Mingpeng's cold gaze suddenly looked at Yu Baihuan again. Grandfather, son's little matter shouldn't be such a big deal, right? And isn't this sonner being overturned? Yu Baihuan instantly had a look of panic on his face. Getting your case overturned? How was your case overturned? Are you really innocent? Previously, I personally went to the court to plead with that rash young man could not, and suddenly your case was overturned? Originally, I also thought that you might really be innocent, but now with the appearance of this wind and cloud ranking, it's obviously not right. Yu Mingpeng questioned in a deep voice. This, Yu Baihuan can't help but swallow up. Obviously on their own suddenly be overturned. Not guilty release. It's also don't know what's going on. And this also showed that today's Yu clan indeed had almost no one who knew that old ancestor Yu Qingha had appeared. Say it. Are you really innocent? Yu Mingpeng clearly saw Yu Baihuan's weakness. The person is indeed killed by the grandson. But, Sonner doesn't know exactly why the case has been overturned. Grandfather. Sonner can swear to it. Yu Baihuan said with a panicked look on his face. What? You don't know why it was overturned either? How is that possible? Yu Mingpeng couldn't help but be incredulous. The Yu clan's children present were also in an uproar. Father, didn't we ask for grandfather's blessing before? And this wind and cloud list a mysterious old man? Will this be? At this time, Yu Filong couldn't help but open his mouth with an uncertain expression. However, before he finished, he was interrupted by Yu Mingpeng with a wave of his hand. Yu Mingpeng also looked shocked and uncertain for a moment. Then he said in a deep voice, this is the end of the day. You guys go back now. All of you give me a good control of your own paws. Don't cause any trouble for the family. Yes. The crowd of Yu family descendants retreated. Yu Mingpeng, on the other hand, went to the ancestral hall with a shifting face. As for Jiang Yun's evil god incarnation, he also ran to the Yu clan ancestral hall, and he didn't care anymore about what Yu Mingpeng was planning to mess up, but instead went straight to the secret room under the ancestral hall and met Yu Qingha, who was in the middle of his knee-length meditation. By the looks of it, the mysterious old man on the first list should be this old thing, right? After all, the floating dust Taoist temple would have been unable to trigram the existence of this old thing. Jiang Yun still has some doubts in his heart, cannot help but give Yu Qingha another fortune-telling? The result is to call him out of the blue. In the trigrams, Yu Qingha already knew the matter of the wind and clouds list. It also did not expect things to develop to this point, so in order to protect the family, the next days, no matter what happened outside, as long as it is not a danger to the survival of the Yu family, it simply did not show up. It wouldn't match up with the mysterious old man from the wind and cloud list. This was because Jiang Yun had learned from his trigrams on Taoist floating dust that the mysterious old man who was ranked first on the list was a real existence that had been trigrammed from the future wind and cloud list. It was determined by the future government and civil society gathering intelligence together. And now Yu Qingha's future trigrams did not appear at all. What the hell is going on here? Who is the mysterious old man at the top of the list? Could it be that there are still tall people lurking within Qiyang town? Jiang Yun was puzzled in his heart, but he was too lazy to think about it for a while. After letting the evil god incarnate leave the secret room, he went back to Yu Baihuan to have his last fortune for the day told, wanting to see if this guy still had any more demons against his family's medicine store after this series of variables. However, What made Jiang Yun speechless was that this Yu Baihuan hadn't given up on his family's medicine store. It seemed to have become an obsession that it was determined to fulfill. Shit. The thing that is looking for death. Let's see if I won't beat you up. Jiang Yun couldn't help but secretly explode. Thinking of the Yu clan's situation today, he can only say that this Yu Baihuan was purely and simply looking for death. Gradually, 5 days passed. Recovered Yu Baihuan has also begun to make a demon. It's as Jiang Yun trigrams that sent people secretly contact Lu's shopkeeper attempts to buy failed, and then proceeded to arrange the ruffians to harass Lu's shopkeeper family. However, not long after Yu Baihuan's men had exchanged words with the 6 ruffians, Jiang Yun had quietly approached the 6 ruffians with Chu Ling's girl. At this moment, within the alleyway, 6 figures wobbled about. Hey, I didn't think we could actually get a big job. 100 silver taels. How many days of drinking are enough for us? Let's get the job done beautifully first. This silver hasn't even arrived yet. Hey boss. Don't worry, it's just a matter of flirting with a woman and bullying a child. This is something we've done many times before, so it's not that simple. Besides, no matter what, the 10 silver taels deposit is still in hand. Boss, do you think it's possible for us to be on a wind and cloud ranking or something? That would be really awesome. What are you daydreaming about? Do we want to be on the wind and cloud ranking? Don't you know how much you weigh? Yang Arrow and his 5 little brothers were chattering away as they walked, while Jiang Yun and Chu Ling were already waiting at the corner of the alley. He exchanged a look with Chu Ling and stepped out on his own, blocking the way of Yang Air and his 5 juniors. At the same time, his evil god incarnation was also keeping an eye on the situation nearby, only to see another black-robed figure keeping an eye on his movements with the Chu Ling girl from a hidden height. And this black-robed figure, Jiang Yun also know who it is the mother? I have to say, his mother is really worried about him. Just this thing, but also have to quietly follow over to keep an eye on. What are you? At this moment, Yang Arrow was stunned and surprised as he sized up Jiang Yun, and there was some disdain under his eyes, clearly not taking the diminutive Jiang Yun seriously. Jia, old me is here to collect debts. It's time for you to pay back the money you owe the gambling house, right? Jiang Yun made a strange duck-like sound. What? You're the guy the gambling house called in? Sure it's not here to be funny? Also, wasn't it said that there's still a month to go? Yang Arrow had a look of disbelief on his face. What 1 month? It's already time. Don't try to bluff me here, Jiang Yun said in a cold voice. He had already read this guy's fortune. This Yang Arrow was 30 years old, with a strength of 4 years in the mortal fetus, and had been a loafer since he was a child, loving to do things like stealing chickens and dogs, and also liking to gamble. But this Yang Arrow more or less some brains, will pull people together. These years also made some contacts. As for its side of the 5 little brother are mortal fetus too. 3 years of strength, pure street skater only. Old man, you are only mistaken. There is indeed 1 month left for the account that I owe. Are you good fortune gambling house trying to bully me? Yang Arrow was already showing displeasure and impatience. You little Yakuza. How dare you call yourself an old man in front of me? Seek death. Jiang Yun, however, directly rose up and attacked Yang Arrow. He was originally here to fight. What he said earlier was just a casual excuse. How would he really pull more with the other side? Yang Arrow was startled and tried to resist. However, he had only risen to a stance before Jiang Yun killed him close to him. Chapter 40 Attack of the Rune Road Powerhouse. As the results of the trigrams came out, Jiang Yun couldn't help but cry out in his heart that he actually still couldn't pass the entrance examination. What the hell was this situation? Could it be that Mr. Le felt that he should go to a better place? Or was it the bundled tutor issue? Right. What would be the requirement for a tutor in his family's current condition? But by all rights, his labor should be worth something, right? He could work as an odd job worker at the school. Nope. Why am I being fooled too? Jiang Yun was instantly depressed. What was he thinking about mopping up in a good cause? There must be some reason why he couldn't pass the entrance examination, and it didn't mean that Lu Fuzi didn't want to accept him. After all, Lu Fuzi had told him to learn 2 volumes of diffractive arts. Maybe there is something else he hasn't accomplished? The days that followed, Jiang Yun observed Muyume's life when she arrived at the floating life school, only to see this girl quickly immersed in the study of organ art, and this girl in the miscellaneous from time to time by naughty children students teasing and flirting. Actually will also play with the children. Later, even because some students secretly said they do not know how to respect the teacher, and began to call themselves students in front of the Lu Fuzi. In such a situation, Jiang Yun could not help but feel depressed. It looks like this miscellaneous life. This good granddaughter of his is quite happy in it. Time gradually passed, and Jiang Yun was already 1 year and 7 months old. Training, 44 years of mortal birth, diffractive arts, 100 years of insight, talent, evil god incarnate, chance, luck, 1, 353. This cultivation has been raised for 10 years, and it's almost halfway to mortal birth. Nowadays, the Chu Ling girl was still helping him prepare for the perfect Tony pill. According to Chu Ling's girl, the spirit medicines for refining the perfect Tony Dan had almost come together. However, the biggest problem right now was that it was not easy to find alchemists capable of refining the perfect Tony Dan, because in order to refine a perfect Tony Dan, one must have a Dan art of Tony for 1,000 years, or perhaps the Dan skill reaches the level of insight, and powerful alchemists generally have forces that feed them, and are not good at negotiating, and even more easily won't alchemize with others. As for the wild alchemists, most of them were not at a sufficient level. A half-ass level would be good enough to be able to refine and alchemize mortal-born level demonic pills. However, any alchemist who was able to refine the Tony Dan would be quickly recruited. So this perfect Tony Dan couldn't be gotten back for a while. Aside from the cultivation aspect, it was already very peaceful within Xiyang town nowadays, and it was almost impossible to find anyone who dared to come out and cause trouble. This was because they were all cleaned up by Jiang Yun when he was bored, and he was already really bored now. One couldn't just find nothing to do and bully people on purpose, right? Now even the Yu family are peaceful, not the whole family industry. Everything is honest. Rules and regulations. Even if the income of the family industry continues to decrease, our frozen hard meticulously do not dare to make a sound. This is called Jiang Yun feel very boring. But today there was an unexpected situation in the town. Young master, there is some situation outside today. The Chu Ling girl came back from outside with a searching look. What's the situation? Jiang Yun was surprised, and at the same time came to have some interest. That guest restaurant at the head of the town has come to an outside female cultivator, calling herself Fong Qian, specifying that she wants to challenge the old codger, and is waiting there. Chu Ling said with an odd expression on his face. Ha? A female cultivator from outside wants to challenge the old codger? Why? Jiang Yun was puzzled. I don't know. It might be for the sake of fame, or it might have another purpose. After all, our Red Sun town doesn't have much contact with the outside world, and it's still a small place, so it's not so bad that someone would come here specifically to challenge the side's wind and cloud ranking experts. I'm worried that something might happen, so before we find out who they are and what they're up to, let's not go out for a while. Let's not go out and play around for a while, okay? Young master? Trulin blinked solicitously. Don't let the little guy out if there's an unforeseen situation. Before Jiang Yun could say anything, his mother's voice had already come from behind himself. Child knows. Mother, don't worry, Jiang Yun said helplessly. He naturally knew that his mother and the Chu Ling girl were hiding here, and were concerned or hiding from something. With such a situation, it was impossible for him to casually initiate trouble. Well, I know that our Yuner is the most well-behaved and understanding. Mother came closer and gently rubbed Jiang Yun's little head with a gentle smile on her face. Jiang Yun, on the other hand, had already had his own evil god avatar quickly head to the Hakai restaurant to look for the female cultivator, and he intended to give the female cultivator a fortune to see what the hell was going on. A few moments of work. The evil god incarnation then found that female cultivator Fong Qian in the Hakai restaurant, a square-faced woman wearing a long dress of plain snow, with a shapely body and a fair, bright face, looking rather upright and dignified. Jiang Yun was slightly surprised. How could such a female cultivator come to challenge him for no reason? I'm only afraid that she really had an ulterior motive. After all, few women's climbing targets would be an old man. Thinking about it, he then counted to the female cultivator, Fong Qiangua. When the results of the fortune-telling came out, Jiang Yun could not help but frown slightly. This female cultivator was a mercenary who specialized in accepting various commissions to earn cultivation resources, and the reason why she was here was also for a commission. This commission was issued by the Mang clan of Top Mountain County in order to catch the enemy who killed one of the family's young masters, and the female cultivator will find him Jiang Yun's old boy identity. It is because the Ming family that enemy and the old boy the same old man identity, cave Ming level of strength, love of chivalry, and playful prefer to tease people. With such an almost similar sign, the female cultivator had suspected him, an old codger, of his identity, and now this so-called challenge was to confirm his identity. This really called Jiang Yun speechless. As for the strength of this female cultivator, it was also not ordinary, with a cultivation level of more than 800 years of Tongyi, but this was not the point. The point was that this female cultivator was a talisman master, and this level of talismanic art, Jiang Yun had not yet been able to trigram it. It also meant that it was at least a talismanic art level of over 100 years of Tongming, and in the trigrams, Jiang Yun also found that this female cultivator with a talismanic skills, capture a number of trigrams do not come out of the unknown existence. It is clear that her strength is not simple. That's all. After a little searching, Jiang Yun decided not to provoke this lord first. In his opinion, this female cultivator's overall strength should still be inferior to Chu Ling's girl. However, Because there was an unknown situation, there was still some risk after all, so he was still cautious. In this way, 3 days passed in succession. Female cultivator Fong Qian challenged to provoke the old codger's news has been spreading, but Jiang Yun old codger's identity has never shown up, and did not give a reply. A time is to cause a variety of speculation. And Fong Qian has also asked around and searched everywhere in Qiyang town for traces of the old codger. Always fruitless Fong Qian, ultimately, but in the guest restaurant called to mock the old codger too, but also made a long link to show that the street insulted the old codger shrunken head turtle, wimpy and other unpleasant words. These words, but the Chu Ling girl to the angry, are ready to secretly go to a meeting of this female cultivator. Naiha has mother pressure. Chu Ling girl ultimately is not dare to fool around. However, Fong Qian's actions have also caused many people in the town to be dissatisfied. At this moment inside the Hakai restaurant, hey, some clowns really think they have a few kilograms? The old codger senior is just disdaining and bullying the weak and innocent. If he was an evil person, he wouldn't know how many feet high the grass is in his grave. Xiao Er was serving food with a table of guests when he said rather eerily, it just so happened that Fong Qian was also passing by, and he immediately glared angrily over. What did you say? Say it again. Chapter 50 Derivation into the Tao. Oh, you can already read and write at the age of 3? Aren't you afraid of affecting the other students in the book school when you say it like that? Lefebvre, however, smiled and asked rhetorically, students will talk to you, husband, and not to other students, and on weekdays, it will be the same as usual to study in class. Is that okay? Jiang Yun said helplessly. He naturally knew that this was too ostentatious, but if he didn't say anything, it didn't look like Lu Fuzi had any intention of letting him learn a higher level of diffraction arts at the moment. He didn't want to waste his time here, freezing there every day repeating what he already knew about literacy enlightenment. That's okay, so what skills do you want to learn? Lefebvre nodded. Diffractive arts. Diffractive arts above the level of insight. Jiang Yun carefully surveyed Lu Fuzi's face. At this moment, Lu Fuzi was the one who stretched out her jade hand and lightly tapped on Jiang Yun's forehead. Ouch! Jiang Yun could not help but subconsciously cover his head. The pain was not painful. It was just that Lu Fuzi was blaming him for this? Did he say something wrong? However, Lu Fuzi didn't call for Jiang Yun to have much time to think. He had already stretched out his jade finger to gently point at Jiang Yun's brow, and a wave of subtle energy dispersed, and immediately a wave of information quickly surged into Jiang Yun's consciousness, allowing him to quickly comprehend it. Diffractive Art Wisdom Diffusion Scroll. Jiang Yun couldn't help but be shocked. He didn't expect Lu Fuzi to have such tactics. However, he didn't have the heart to think much about it, and quickly comprehended the knowledge that Lu Fuzi had passed on to him again. A few moments later, Diffractive Arts, Initiation, Jiang Yun's diffractive art had stepped into a higher realm, the realm of Tao entry, from the 300 years of insight. As for this realm of entry into the Tao, it takes 1,000 years for a minor consummation, and 10,000 years for a bottleneck major consummation. Alright, you have been taught. If you want to learn again, come back to seek out your master when you are little complete. Lu Fuzi retracted her jade finger and spoke softly. Thanks, husband. Jiang Yun immediately gave a respectful bowing salute. Go down. Lefebvre slightly shook his head gently in a slightly unenthusiastic manner. Yes, husband. Jiang Yun retreated in response. Subsequently, Jiang Yun, who had been excited and thrilled for a night, honestly came back to the book school the next day to become literate and enlightened. But in order not to waste his time, he spent his mind on assisting Xiaoya's literacy and enlightenment, so that he could cultivate this future alchemy master as soon as possible. In fact, he had previously thought about when he would master the alchemy skill himself. After all, his chi luck ability should be able to work as well. The problem was that the skills he had mastered now were already a bit too much, and his chi luck simply wasn't enough. Then it would not be too late to cultivate a master alchemist for now, and then consider whether or not to master up the matter of alchemy in the future when one's own chi is in surplus. Gradually, a month passed. The life of the book school is harmonious. The students are either in serious literacy enlightenment, or each immersed in their own preferences. In addition to the occasional mutual playfulness, there has been almost no conflict. It was evident that the students who could be selected by Lu Fuzi were all excellent in terms of character. In addition, Jiang Yun's granddaughter Mu Yumei's machine art has been accomplished. Made a number of machine tigers, cows, horses and so on thrown in the school head. Weekdays for children to play. In fact, these organ puppets can be manipulated by Mu Yumei to move up, and has the strength of the mortal tire 7 years, only because Lu Fuzi did not allow it. So on weekdays, the good granddaughter these organs can only be thrown there as decorative toys. Jiang Yun had originally thought that the organ technique that Lu Fuzi had given his good granddaughter was just making some ordinary organs, but he hadn't expected it to be such a subtle skill. As for Jiang Yun himself, He had been cultivating the diffractive art all this month. Training, 19 years of Tongi. Diffractive arts, 287 years of initiation. Symbol technique, 300 years of insight. Talents, evil god incarnate, chi luck, 3 million years. Heart awareness, luck, 1200, because he didn't have any other capable cultivators at the moment. And he was also anxious to learn a higher level of diffractive arts from Lu Fuzi. After all, this kind of cultivation knowledge, it is better to grasp it in one's own hands as early as possible. Every day a year of improvement. According to this progress, he estimated that it would take more than 2 years before he could diffract the art into the Tao of small perfection, which would be around the age of 5. And he now into the Tao of 287 years of diffraction art. Actually also has not been able to fortune-telling to the existence of Mother and Chu Ling girl. This has also more or less called him to feel unexpected. I do not know to be diffraction into the road small perfect. Cannot count out. In addition, he and the little girl, or fortune-telling to the future will attract a big enemy door, resulting in the whole family to escape the results. This enemy in the end how to find the door, but became his most concerned about the problem now. At this time, Zhang Yun and Zhang Yu, accompanied by Chu Ling's girl, headed for the floating life book school as usual. The evil god incarnate also probed the surrounding conditions as usual. Suddenly, Zhang Yun only felt a chill strike his body, as if he was being spied upon. He instantly turned his head to look, but he saw a hunched old man with a face of shock and incredulity, dressed in rough clothing and leaning on a walking stick, looking very ordinary. Trigger teller. This thought instantly flashed through Zhang Yun's mind. This old man Fong secretly gossiped about him. His evil god incarnation had also seen this old man on the side of the road before, but because it was too ordinary, he didn't pay much attention to it, and even if he did, he couldn't tell anything from his appearance alone, unless he gave him a fortune-telling. The old man had also quickly returned to his senses, and with a flash of fear and panic in his gaze, he turned around pretending not to notice, and slowly left with a limp. Young master, what's wrong? Is there something wrong with that old man? The Chu Ling girl had also discovered Zhang Yun's movements. At this moment that old man's movements vaguely froze. Oh no, it just feels like that old man looks so ugly and kind of scary. Zhang Yun shook his head. He didn't want to scare the snakes just yet. This time that old man's movements were already visibly stiff. Young master, it's not good for you to comment on people's appearance like this. Even if people's parents are ugly, it's not their fault. Chu Ling was stunned. Is that old grandpa so ugly? Why can't you see it? Xiao Ya, on the other hand, was a bit puzzled. Oh, we'd better get to school before we're late. Zhang Yun responded and pretended to continue on his way to the floating life book school. In reality, his evil god avatar was already firmly staring at the old man. He was going to kill this old man later. At the same time, he had already performed a trigram reading on the old man with the help of the evil god incarnation. It was discovered that this old man was indeed a fortune teller. This old man's name was Meng Yi. He was 131 years old this year, and his cultivation was 893 years of Tongyu, 734 years of diffractive art insight, 227 years in the gifted heart awareness. He is a member of the Meng family, a large family in Dingshan County. Of course, the Meng family itself was a huge family, and this Dingshan County Meng family only belonged to one of the side families, and did not represent the entire Meng family community. And this Top Mountain County Meng family was also the same family that had previously invited rune art female cultivator Fong Qian to seek revenge and look for trouble. However, this Meng Yi came this time, not because of the previous feud in that block, but for Xiao Ya. The reason Shuya was abducted before was because of this old man, because of the Meng family. The Meng family is the organization behind the scenes. In the trigrams, Meng Yi is the top of the Top Mountain County's top trigrammers, but often outside the clouds. In fact, is by virtue of all the trigrams to all places to secretly find talented young children to the Meng family, and then through a series of covert operations, sent these young children abducted back to cultivate slaves for the family to squeeze and grow. No wonder his Zhang Yun family has not been able to avoid the results of the enemy to find the door. The original is with this bad old man from the obstruction. After all, a masterful fortune teller good at avoiding bad luck, but very difficult to be found. And this bad old man was just a moment of curiosity. Could not help but give him Zhang Yun secretly on such a fortune. The results did not expect to be such a brat he found out. He was directly frightened. After all, now he is a diffractive art into the Tao of 287 years, has completely crushed this bad old man. It's simply not something that this bad old man can trigram, and not being able to calculate his Zhang Yun's existence. This bad old man would not know whether his cultivation had exceeded his diffusion technique or whether his diffusion technique had exceeded his diffusion technique. But either way, it was enough to call this bad old man out in a cold sweat. After all, he was only in the mold of a 3-year-old toddler now. Chapter 60, a perfectly targeted layout. Good granddaughter. It's me, Jiang Yun responded. Grandpa. Muyume's low cry of excitement and surprise rang out, followed by her quickly opening the door and hastily putting on her clothes. Cough cough. Little girl's family. Such disregard for etiquette. What a shame. Jiang Yun couldn't help but cough lightly. Grandpa. You haven't come to visit your granddaughter for so long. Your granddaughter misses you, Muyume said in a rather aggrieved and petulant manner. Well, you're such a big man. You're still acting like a child. How are you getting used to being here? Well, it's okay. Grandpa, come sit in the house. It's late at night, so as not to disturb Lufuzi. No, I came here this time, mainly to give you something and to explain something to you. Jiang Yun waved his hand. What is it, Grandpa? Muyume couldn't help but feel a little lost. Here are 100 amulets of fixation, 100 amulets of peace, 30 amulets of divine movement, and the Fearless Iron Order from the Fearless Martial School. Jiang Yun casually flipped out a bunch of talismans, as well as the Fearless Iron Order that the Chuling girl had given him earlier, and handed it to Muyume. Ha? Another talisman? Grandpa, where did you get so many talismans? Granddaughter hasn't even used a bit of the last one yet. And there's no need for granddaughter to use any of them in this book school. And this Fearless Iron Order from the Fearless Martial School? Muyume was quite stunned, but still reached out and took it, because for it, as long as it is something sent by Grandpa, it is important to keep it safe. This time, these are caveman 300-year-old talismans, not like the ones I gave you last time. Jiang Yun responded that what he had given this girl before could only be considered as practice. A talisman of 300 years of insight. Grandpa, how did you get these talismans? Muyume was instantly shocked. As for this Fearless Iron Order, you can ask the Fearless Martial Arts School to do something for you. I want you to go to the owner of the Fearless Martial Arts School and ask him to select disciples who can be absolutely trusted to come out and give each of them 3 of this amulet, 3 of the Peace Amulet, and 1 of the God's Walking Amulet, and then cooperate with the officials in a crunch operation in 17 days' time. The rest of the talismans are for your own defense. Also, you shouldn't reveal your identity. And don't say that I gave you the Fearless Iron Order. Other than that you improvise. Jiang Yun commanded. He knew that this disciple who could be absolutely trusted. Naturally there couldn't be many of them. How many could be picked out was how many. As for the Fearless Iron Order for the current him, the use is not great. He is also not convenient to directly go to the door to find people. In the future there are any things to this good granddaughter on behalf of the work. It is just right. What kind of action? But also those guys from the Fearless Martial School? They also just have a caring child with a promising future. Muyume could not help but speak in an odd tone. Clearly some dislike of the Fearless Martial Arts Museum. If you're told to do something, just do it. There's no need to ask so many questions. Jiang Yun was not in a good mood. Well, since it's Grandpa's intention, my granddaughter will do it herself. Muyume was a bit helpless, and then said expectantly, Grandpa, won't you stay here a bit longer? Granddaughter still has a lot of things she wants to say to Grandpa. No. I have important business I need to take care of. Jiang Yun glanced at the direction where Lufuzi lived. He was somewhat looking forward to Lufuzi to come out to see, but unfortunately no movement was seen. Well then, Muyume let out a soft sigh of loss. Good granddaughter. Grandpa is doing this for your own good. Now that the government offices of Qiyang Town and the 3 Taoist monuments have been implicated by Grandpa, I don't want to ask you to be implicated as well. Jiang Yun pretended to be helpless. Is that wind and cloud list because of Grandpa you? Muyume immediately showed a look of surprise. Well, really can't stay long. Let's go. When Jiang Yun said that, he quickly leapt away. After leaving the Floating Life Book School, Jiang Yun went back to the Floating Dust Taoist Temple. Old Codger Sr. Late night visit. But what do you have to command? Taoist Floating Dust said respectfully. The matter of the Meng family in Top Mountain County has already been investigated clearly by the old man. The details are so. Jiang Yun described the situation in detail. A few moments later, this Top Mountain County Meng family is so heartless. Taoist Master Floating Dust couldn't help but look shocked and angry. For all the things they've done over the years, it's not much of a surprise. Jiang Yun responded. Then Senior, do you have a plan to deal with it now? At that time, if the Meng clan from Dingshan County really comes in such a scale, with the strength of these people from Poverty Road, it's impossible to fight against them even if you have great strength. Senior, facing 2 opponents above the cave mine small perfection at the same time. I'm afraid that it's only difficult to defeat them with 2 fists, not to mention that you can still find the time to clean up those other rebellious Meng clan scions, right? Taoist Floating Dust's heavy face shifted. Yes, with just my own strength, I'm bound to be overstretched to cope with it, and I'm really not sure if I can take it into account. That's why old me came here. mainly to seek help from the government offices and the three Taoist Quan. This elder is joking. It's not seeking help from us. Rather, we are seeking help from Senior. So Senior, what command, despite say is, poor road will certainly try to achieve. I'm afraid that I'm not capable of doing much to help. It won't be. This is not difficult to say the least. As long as we can work together, we will surely be able to accomplish it. Taoist floating dust, do you have a layout map of Qiyang town here? There is also a pen. Jiang Yun inquired. Yes, there is. The poor Taoist will fetch it now. Taoist master floating dust hurriedly turned around and went to bring the layout map of Qiyang town. Old man, now say with you. These locations will be the starting point for those sons of Meng family in Dingshan County to break out in rebellion when the time comes. And then these are the number of thieves in each location. At that time, I will need you to arrange for trustworthy men from the three major Taoist temples and the government offices to ambush them at these points in advance. When these thieves rebel, they will be quickly taken down. Jiang Yun picked up a pen and drew circles on the map and labeled the number of personnel. This, Senior can get such detailed information, when it is important to the extreme, rare and outstanding. But, Senior said before that the dozens of people brought by the Mang clan in Top Mountain County this time are almost all Tony-level existences, with the lowly strength of our three Taoist sects and the government offices. Even if we can lay out an ambush well in advance, I'm afraid it's just not going to help. Floating dust Taoist master's tone, but there is a deep sense of powerlessness. This may be a power down 10 will bring a sense of oppression. Well, this layer, the old man is naturally clear. So, Jiang Yun flipped out a bunch of talismans. Talisman? Taoist floating dust froze. Taoist floating dust. Here are 150 fixation talismans, 150 peace talismans, and 50 divine movement talismans respectively, all of which are at the level of 300 years of insight. At that time, you convene the absolutely reliable candidates from the three great Taoist sects and the government offices. Each person is given 3 amulets of fixation, 3 amulets of peace, and 1 amulet of divine movement to deal with those thieves, so I think that will be enough. As for having more talismans, you can make your own arrangements. Consider this as an indemnity from the old man to you all. Also, the Fearless Martial Arts School will come to help. They already have talismans. Jiang Yun opened his mouth, and after hearing this, Taoist floating dust had already looked at Jiang Yun with a dumbfounded expression on his face. Chapter 70, The Coming of Chaos. This, slave girl also does not know that is the evil god Na, and the slave girl and the little young master have not yet arrived at the Top Mountain County. However, when the slave girl and the little young master were fleeing for their lives, that evil god seemed to have struck out at Dingshan County. Unfortunately, the slave girl was too scared and didn't dare to look back, only to feel a horrible power coming from her. And at that time, the slave girl couldn't help but feel a little weak in the legs. Chu Ling said pitifully. When her mother heard this, she could not help but fall silent, her face constantly changing color. Mother, don't worry too much. Top Mountain County is so far away from our place. That evil god won't come over. Jiang Yun opened his mouth to comfort. What do you little guy know? That's an evil god. When the evil god appears, it means that the world is going to be in chaos, and no one will be left untouched and uninvolved. Moreover, Qiyang Town is not too far from Dingshan County, although it is not too close. For an existence like the evil god, it's only not even a distance. Mother gently tapped Jiang Yun's forehead. Jiang Yun couldn't help but touch his head helplessly. But, from today onwards, I forbid you to leave Red Sun Town, before the situation is clarified. You and Linger will stay here honestly. Do you understand? Mother was serious again. Well, slave girl knows. Chu Ling immediately nodded in response. No, mother, actually this. Jiang Yun stopped when the words reached his mouth, because his mother was looking at him with an inexplicable look, which instantly gave him a premonition that once he finished speaking, he would immediately be cleaned up. Forget it, let's see what happens for now. Jiang Yun was helpless in his heart. It was better for him not to be too rowdy at a time like this. After all, he couldn't say that the evil god was actually made by him. Gradually, in less than a month's time, the news that Top Mountain County had been attacked by the evil god, and that a large family over there had been wiped out in a matter of moments, came through. At once, it also caused panic in Qiyang Town, and the streets and alleys were plunged into a tense atmosphere. However, called Jiang Yun feel some tears and laughter is, nowadays Qiyang Town actually have many people think here have his old boy sheltered. The evil god should not bring too much calamity to the town of Qiyang. What is it about him that makes him so trustworthy? But when you think about it, it's not unreasonable. It's as if in the eyes of most children, their own father is the existence of the heavens and the earth. As long as there is a father, there is nothing to be afraid of. It's just an illusion created by the limitations of their vision at the time. But then again, It had to be said that this blind trust of the people of Chiyang Town was really trusting the right thing. After all, the evil god incarnation is originally his gift. He naturally cannot be used to jeopardize the Red Sun Town. What was more called Jiang Yun's interest at the moment was that Jiang Huai's reaction. All this time, his evil god avatar was keeping an eye on this fellow. At this time in the Yamen was waiting for Jiang Huai has learned the news of the top of the mountain county. It's as a face of shocked disbelief color. Prefect D. Is this news definite? The Meng family of Dingshan County was really exterminated by the evil god? Jiang Huai questioned with a heavy tone. Can't be wrong. I have sent people to triple verify that day the entire top mountain county Meng family in a moment was exterminated. Chickens and dogs do not stay. Di Tongchu responded in a calm tone, but his expression was very complex. With worry, surprise, and fear. How is it possible that the evil god appeared to exterminate the Meng family in top mountain county? Jiang Huai's voice couldn't help but tremble a little. It seems that this top mountain county Meng family is not sure what they have done, and even the evil god has been invoked. Then, Jiang Yi order, this side of things, you still want to continue to help that side to investigate? Di Tongchu spoke again flatly. You have left this matter at that. You'd better keep your mouths shut too, lest you get into trouble. Jiang Huai was immediately shocked and furious, but after saying that, he was panicked and quickly left the yamen. Humph, thought it was much better? Are you afraid of this? Di Tongchu couldn't help but let out a scornful. Gradually, by the second month, there were still news coming in one after another from the side of Top Mountain County. Because of the sudden appearance of the evil god, all the 9 streams and 10 families ran over during this period of time, and it was said that there were quite a few of them that were still hidden evil god congregations. Today's Top Hill County is a mixed bag of all kinds of people, so much so that it still causes a fair amount of chaos from time to time. What's more interesting is that the news about the appearance of the evil god was passed around, but it actually turned out to be the Meng family of Dingshan County secretly researching the evil arts and summoning the evil god to come out. And even the Meng family has done a lot of unethical things for so many years, but also all of them have been exposed, and the rumors have been spreading, and the heaven is furious and people are angry. As for Jiang Yun's side, since Xiaoya had already finished alchemy, he had taken a demonic dam that was over 800 years old from Tongyi this month, and his cultivation had gotten another spike. Cultivation, Tongyi 355 years, diffractive arts, 8 years in the spirit sea, symbol technique, 300 years of insight. Talents, evil god incarnate, chi luck, 3 million years. Heart awareness, luck, 1, 415. In this way, another month has passed. It is rumored that the Top Mountain County side has come to a number of Imperial Capital's supreme masters to guard the investigation. The situation has been stabilized a lot. Jiang Yun, on the other hand, took the remaining demonic elixir that was 700 years old from the Tongyi, raising his cultivation by another 70 years. Cultivation level, 432 years. Diffractive arts, 8 years in the spirit sea, symbol technique, 300 years of insight, talents, evil god incarnate, chi luck, 3 million years, heart awareness, luck, 1, 445. During this period of time, he lived a peaceful and calm life, but it was Chu Ling who suffered this girl. This girl is nervous every day in the town to listen and analyze the news about the evil god, for fear that the evil god one day ran to the Red Sun town this side of. After another 3 months, the situation in the vicinity originally tended to stabilize but became tense again. According to the news from the top of the mountain county, the court seems to have a big deal, was sent over to the high people all panicked and suddenly left. The various parties lurking in the top of the county began to emerge again, tossed out many things, all of a sudden again to make people panic. What's going on? Could it be that chaos is really coming? Jiang Yun couldn't help but feel a little nervous as well. He had originally been a little puzzled. He had let the evil god incarnation appear for just a little while. How could he have let the chaotic world come early? During this period of time, Mr. Liu was teaching as usual, as if he had no idea of what was happening outside. But now the top of the mountain county this news came. But let him cannot help but vaguely some premonition. Seems to really want to go out of the big event. Time gradually passed, but the news coming from the outside is more and more wrong. It is said that a lot of chaos has begun to appear everywhere, with large and small wars breaking out frequently. And the evil god cult is said to have received the guidance of the evil god, and is rapidly emerging, constantly expanding and absorbing its congregation. On the other hand, on this side of Chiyang Town, after only half a year, there were already frequent demons or evil cultivators coming to cause trouble. Although their strength is not good, they are annoying. There's no defense. From time to time, some human lives would be caused. These ensuing disruptions all but signaled to the crowd that chaos had arrived. Chapter 80, tell me about it. Be careful. This little old man has a very powerful peace talisman in his possession. Facing a joint strike from us and still being able to explode with such power. I'm afraid it's a peace talisman that has already reached the level of cave brightness minor perfection. It seems that we have to be involved at a distance to consume it. Do not engage him in close quarters. At this moment, a white-clothed demonic cultivator man quickly spoke in a deep voice. Upon hearing this, the rest of the demon cultivator minor heads also understood and responded individually. Only the demonic cultivator who was facing Jiang Yun's attack was seen retreating and defending himself with all his might. The white-clothed demonic cultivator man and the other 3 demonic cultivators then exerted their full strength to blast all sorts of forces of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth at Jiang Yun. The 5 demons, on the other hand, quickly transformed into their demonic bodies and erupted with even greater strength to strike out and bombard Jiang Yun. Hoof! Jiang Yun snorted coldly, facing the many attacks coming his way. He still didn't pay much attention to them and just continued to attack the target locked in front of him. At once, rumble! A series of explosions spread out. There was a grunt of pain. However, the demonic cultivator who was targeted by Jiang Yun was directly bombarded with blood spilling from the corners of his mouth as he retreated back and forth. The attacks that were placed on Jiang Yun were all blocked by the peace talisman on his body. He hadn't even consumed a single peace talisman yet. Sure enough, it's a peace talisman at the level of cave mind minor perfection. Continue consuming. He definitely doesn't have too many peace talismans of this level on him. Don't give him too many chances to strike. With a reminder from the white-clothed demonic cultivator man, the group of demonic cultivator junior leaders continued to join forces against Jiang Yun. Jiang Yun heard, still indifferent, continued to lock the party the demon cultivator killed over. Now that he still had a divine traveling talisman close to the level of cave mind attached to his feet, once these guys who currently only had the strength of tiny little perfection were locked onto him, they wouldn't be able to run away even if they wanted to. Then he only needed to be pressed down one by one to fight. And he would be able to quickly solve all of these guys in a clean manner. At this time the demonic cultivator who was being stared at by Jiang Yun's death stare, could no longer help but show a hint of wanting to cry but could only fight hard with his head. It's, surprisingly, a peace talisman at the level of cave Ming little perfection. This senior is really hiding deep. On one side, Gu Hai couldn't help but open his mouth with an extremely complicated expression. Worthy of being a fortune teller who can win over that old man Mu. It doesn't really seem that simple. Zhao Changqing couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief as well. No wonder the senior had a look of determination for the young soulflower before. And this way is all bland. So it turns out to be so. Hidden Knight, on the other hand, showed a thoughtful expression. Boom, boom, boom. After a fierce fight, amidst the successive bursts of sound, Jiang Yun had eventually hardened the demonic cultivator that he had locked onto, and at this moment, the peace talisman on his body had finally been consumed by one. Humph. One has already been broken. According to the usual practice, the maximum number of peace talismans of this level that he could have on him would only be 3. That is, there are still 2 left. With us joining forces, we can definitely take it down. The white-clothed demonic cultivator man who had been giving orders just now spoke again. And the demon girl leader and the rest of the demon cultivators are also slightly relieved. Relieved a lot of appearance, but not the slightest intention to feel sad or angry or anything for that demon cultivator who has just been beheaded by Jiang Yun. Oh, it looks like you seem to know a lot about the old man? At this moment, Jiang Yun's gaze could not help but stare at the white-clothed demon cultivator man. This guy had been beeping non-stop just now, more or less calling for some annoyance. When? Of course. Aren't talisman masters all this virtuous? To people they don't know and don't know well, they usually just sell or give 1 talisman. For those who know each other and have a good relationship, they would probably just give 3 talismans. For those who have a better relationship, they will only give 10 talismans at most. Stingy. And the more powerful the talisman artist, the more stingy they are. So I dare to conclude that you'll never have more than 3 peace talismans of this level on you. The white demon cultivator man said with a deep voice of certainty, but its somewhat evasive gaze. It seems to be a little afraid that it will be stared at by Jiang Yun at this moment. Well, that's a good analysis. So go fuck yourself. With a movement of his figure, Jiang Yun had quickly attacked the white-clothed demonic cultivator man. Not bad. He had indeed locked onto this guy. It wasn't because of anything else. It was because this guy talked too much and spoke badly. It was just annoying. You, quickly, keep consuming the old thing. He's going to jump over the wall. The white-clothed demonic cultivator man was shocked and hurriedly retreated to resist while continuing to command. The rest of the demon cultivators heard this and immediately responded, once again joining forces with all their might to hold Jiang Yun back. The demoness leader, on the other hand, was observing the battle with narrowed eyes, intent on discerning something from Jiang Yun's emotional reaction. Boom, boom, boom. Another series of explosions. Ah, The peace talisman on this old piker definitely won't last much longer. You must avenge me. One last miserable howl rang out. The white demonic cultivator man ended up being similarly hardened by Jiang Yun. The remaining 8 demon cultivator minor leaders also obeyed and continued to join forces to consume Jiang Yun, all looking like they believed what the white-clothed demon cultivator man had said. Jiang Yun didn't care that much, catching the nearest demon wolf demon and attacking forcefully again regardless. This old piker, the demoness leader, couldn't help but slightly knit her brows, as if she could tell something was wrong. A few moments of intense fighting. The peace talisman on Jiang Yun's body was finally consumed by another one. The small leaders of the group of demonic cultivators all revealed an uplifted look of victory in sight. And with that, the demonic wolf demon was forcefully blown away by Jiang Yun. The battle then continued. This time, Jiang Yun caught a female demonic cultivator and continued to press and fuck her to death regardless. Surnamed Gu, do you think that senior really only has at most 3 peace talismans of that level on him? Zhao Changqing's somewhat nervous and worried voice couldn't help but ring out. I don't know. But under normal circumstances, it does. Anyway, in my usual dealings, I would only give people 3 talismans at most. After all, talismans are supposed to be the root of a talisman artist's strength. The ones that I can give more are usually situations like in the demon cave, when I need to work together against the enemy. Gu Hai responded. If this senior really only has 3 peace talismans of that level on him, it doesn't seem like he'll be able to make it to the end. Looking at it now, senior is either bluffing or has more than just 3 peace talismans of that level. Xu Jingfeng's voice rang out with it. At the same time, Jiang Yun had already blasted the 4th demonic cultivator, and the 3rd peace talisman on him was consumed along with it. Done. At this moment, the 6 remaining demon cultivator junior leaders all revealed looks of excitement and delight. The 4 Gu Hai people, on the other hand, tensed up, and once again, the demon girl leader's eyes narrowed slightly. What did you get done? So happy, tell me? Jiang Yun spoke casually, but his gaze fell on a canine demon at the nearest location. His flat tone instantly caused everyone present to freeze. You don't have those awesome peace charms on you anymore. That canine demon instantly responded with some panic. Oh yeah, Jiang Yun responded, and his figure moved, but he once again sent out an attack. It was still a strong attack stance regardless. The canine demon immediately showed a horrified expression on his face. Not good. I'm afraid there are only more than 3 peace talismans on this old piker. Everyone be careful. The rest of the demon cultivator mini-heads reacted and hurriedly joined forces with all their might to deal with Jiang Yun again. 10. At this time, the demoness leader is holding the whip with both hands taut. Already a leaping posture.